Welcome to this very special edition of the Weekend Report with the Weekend Vigilante. I'm your host, Sheila Zilinsky, with Doug Hagmann. It's the investigator and the instigator teaming up for this Saturday, September 20th, 2014 edition. Folks, we have an amazing show tonight. For the first half, we are joined by L.A. Marzulli. And for those that don't know L.A. Marzulli, well, first of all, I'm not sure what rock you've been hiding under, but L.A. is the highly acclaimed author of On the Trail of the Nephilim, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, and more incredible books. He received an honorary doctorate for his work on the Nephilim trilogy. His books are hard-hitting exposés on topics such as alien anomalies, giants, UFOs, alien deception, strange occurrences, and the agenda of the fallen angels. He's done the 8 installments of Watchers series. You've heard him on Coast to Coast AM, on TV, Prophecy in the News. He speaks to audiences worldwide, and we're so incredibly lucky and privileged to have him on tonight. I could go on, but without further ado, L.A., welcome to the program, sir. And welcome also Doug Hagmann.
Well, thank you, Sheila. And L.A., it's great to have you back, sir. It's great to have you on, and you're indeed highly acclaimed. The last time you were on, we got emails for, I think, 3 days afterwards saying what a great guest you were. So we're just going to turn it over to you and Sheila.
So welcome to the program, L.A. Doug, do we have L.A. on?
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Hang on a second, L.A. Let me unmute you here. I apologize for that. There we go. I'm sorry. I was pressing buttons and I was bouncing you back and forth. I apologize. Sorry about that.
Well, it's sort of humbling to hear all this. I'm sure you must be speaking about someone else.
I'm speaking about you.
Good grief.
Well, let's jump into things here. Christians talking about this weird stuff. I mean, LA, as you know, Doug and I always get accused. We have people like Steve Quayle on our show all the time, and of course, we're talking about that weird stuff again. Why are you talking about this bizarro stuff, Sheila? So, LA, why are we talking about it? Because so many Christians today, they don't want to talk about fallen angels. They certainly don't want to talk about the supernatural anomalies and, yet donkeys that are talking and coins and fish and walking on water and, staffs that become snakes are, that's okay. Because, come on, let's face it, the Bible, a lot of biblical overlays defy physics. So why are so many Christians so uncomfortable when they're dealing with these kind of subjects we're going to be talking about tonight?
I think most Christians are very afraid of the supernatural to begin with, even though they read their Bibles. We read our Bibles, and everything is cleaned up. It's all antiseptic. Everything's cleaned up. It's sanitized, antiseptic, and that's where we are. And the supernatural is very sloppy. You mentioned several of the things: stabs that turn into snakes, men that walk on water, coins that appear in fish's mouth. I mean, this stuff is crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. It is. And yet, that's what God seems to enjoy. I mean, Father, El Elyon, one of his many titles, Most High God, enjoys this kind of stuff. He likes messing with it. I mean, when Jesus rose from the dead, I talk about this all the time, the apostles are in the upper room, and they're all freaked out. The doors are closed. They're afraid that the Romans are going to come in and take them and do the same thing to them because they're followers of Yeshua, followers of Jesus, right? So they're figuring, the jig's up. We're next. And, the gentle Jesus, the white Jesus that we see with the lamb around his shoulders, kind of going, hey, I'm Jesus, would knock on the door and go, hey, guys, it's me, Jesus. I've risen from the dead. Let me in. I'm going to come in now, okay? He doesn't do that. I mean, it's he just pops through the wall and appears, ta-da! And it's like, come on. They're all freaked out. And then he gets, it's me, it's okay. And then he does the typical guy thing, what have you guys got to eat? And, I mean, this is who we're dealing with here, a man's man that pulls no punches. It's not this cleaned-up version, and I won't mention any names that we see that thousands of people go to every week and sit in the pews, and then somehow that's religion, or that's nothing. That's a form of religion, but denying its power. And the church needs to understand that until we allow the Holy Spirit back in to the church, which we've done a great job of keeping him out, and then we get in arguments, well, the acts of the Holy Spirit are only in the book of Acts and they died off with the apostles. Where does it say that? Where the heck does it say that? It doesn't. It's all man-made nonsense because the supernatural is alarming. Most people don't know how to sit in the presence of God and just be still and know that He is God, right? Most people don't know how to, they don't do it. The churches don't practice it, and yet we're admonished to do that.
Well, when it comes to the Bible, there is a dark side to Bible prophecy, isn't there? But they don't want to talk about that part.
Well, there was again, I'm not mentioning names, there was this woman that wrote this scathing article about how there are no such thing as Nephilim, and that all these people like myself who were talking about it, don't have their heads on straight. I'm sort of taking liberty here, but that's what this person said, and I wrote the person back and said, listen, I've written 9 books on this subject. You got to do your homework. You're leading people astray. You have no idea what you're talking about, quite frankly. And I might be too abrupt and too in your face, but excuse me, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. You need to do some homework before you start blasting away at those of us who have spent years at great risk to bring this to the body of Messiah, to the body of Christ, to the Anointed One. And, look, what's going on, unless we understand what happened in Genesis 6, we have no idea when Jesus warns us that it'll be like the days of Noah when He returns. And it's completely mistranslated by most people. He's just talking about corruption. Yeah. I'm sorry, what was that, Sheila?
Well, you're right. It absolutely is. And, I mean, that's a good segue because speaking of writing 9 books, L.A., for our new listeners and people less familiar with your work, say a total beginner, I think there's a lot of confusion between, and this is often I find when I read people's blogs and different kinds of forums, there's often a lot of confusion between giants and aliens and demons and fallen angels and Nephilim. So break that down for people. Differentiate that for us, please, if you will.
Real quick, the Nephilim, or the Nephilim, depending on how you want to pronounce it, are the offspring, the unholy offspring, of the union between the fallen angelic host of heaven and the women of earth. The offspring, the Nephilim, after the flood, became the disembodied spirits that we call demons today, which roam the earth. So the demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. The proof text for that is when Jesus sees the man of the tombs, the man of Gadara, and asks him, who are you? And the demons in him reply, Legion, for we are many. Fallen angels do not need to inhabit anyone. They can, but they don't need to inhabit anyone. It says Satan entered into Judas. That's an example of that. But demons need a body in order to materialize in this dimension. Satan does not need that. We know from several proof texts where Satan appears to Jesus after 40 days of fasting and takes him up to a high mountain and takes him to the Temple Mount, right? And it's basically moving him from place to place. And then tempting him and asking him certain things, and he's there, physically. When the angels meet with Job, or the angels meet with the Most High God in heaven, and Satan is amongst them, and the Most High God says, "Where have you been?" And the fallen one says, "I've been walking to and fro over the face of the earth." That's literal. He's walking to and fro over the face of the earth. Disembodied spirits of the Nephilim are the demonic entities which roam the earth. They are earthbound spirits. They do, I think, have access to the second heaven, but they're mostly earthbound spirits, and they're demonic, and they're in a fixed state. There can be no redemption for them. They're in a fixed state, and they hate us, and they are incredibly malevolent, incredibly evil. And those are the disembodied spirits of the progeny of the fallen angels and the women of earth, known as the Nephilim. So aliens, like we see in movies, are 2 schools of thought. One school is that these so-called aliens are from the Pleiades star cluster, or Zeta Reticuli, or Betelgeuse, or wherever, and they've flown here, and they are, in fact, our progenitors. They are our creators. Those scholars, let's say, when I use the word loosely, like Richard Dawkins, but he's a very brilliant man, and he's certainly one of the most ardent supporters of the Darwinian paradigm, Darwinism, and he believes in panspermia, that perhaps millions of years ago a race of highly evolved extraterrestrials created us in a laboratory and seeded us through the universe. We landed up here on Earth, and presto changeo, here we are today. And so he believes, as many people do, the idea of panspermia, that at some point they, ET, will come back, usher us into a time of peace and prosperity, give us a DNA upgrade, and on and on and on, free energy. The exopolitic movement, that's getting more legs even as we speak, is embracing this ideology. The exopolitic movement, the ancient alien crowd that believes in the ancient astronauts, also hold to this paradigm. I do not hold to this paradigm. I believe we are looking at a cosmic ruse which has been set in place, and the springboard for that, of course, would be the Darwinian paradigm, or Darwinism, happening in the middle of the 19th century, a long, long time ago now, really, when you think about it. And that has cut the legs off from underneath of the Christian worldview, and has replaced and become the dominant paradigm in which everything in academia and people in the scientific community, that's what they embrace. That's the centerpiece. That's the paradigm that is sacrosanct in both academia and the scientific community, the Darwinian paradigm. So the Christian worldview that a loving God created everything ex nihilo, spoke it into existence, is no longer in vogue. In fact, those people like myself are looked at as sort of a throwback to Neanderthals, because we believe that Yeshua, Jesus, spoke everything into existence, and we get that from John. Which interesting is, they'll scoff at us, and they'll laugh at us, but somehow it's okay for Dawkins to say, well, maybe millions of years ago a race of extraterrestrials created us and seeded us through the galaxy. I mean, he has no clue as to how any of this began. None. But somehow we can't, it's intellectual fascism, because we can't hold to our belief. His belief is just as absurd as ours, perhaps more so. At least we've got the thread of prophecy, which is spoken thousands of years ago, a priori, and all those prophecies, many of those prophecies have come true with 100% accuracy. Dawkins has nothing to hang his hat on, his intellectual hat on. We've got a steady stream of prophetic utterances by different prophets over thousands of years coming true, and we see many of those prophecies coming to light and coming into fruition even now, even as I speak, when we look at what's going on in the Middle East. So that at least points us to this God, whoever you may think he may be, that somehow is outside space-time as we know it, and is calling out the beginning from the end, just like Isaiah tells us, and the end before the beginning, and does so with great specificity. And Edgar Casey and Blossom Goodchild, and with all due respect to all those Nostradamus out there who believe in Nostradamus, they're about 50 to 60% accurate. And I get into this, how they're able to do it from the cosmic chess match. But that's it. They're not all-knowing. They're not accurate 100% of the time, where the biblical prophetic utterances are 100% accurate 100% of the time. And frankly, that we're seeing, in my opinion, the nascent beginnings of the Psalm 83 war, as my colleague and good friend Bill Salas has written about.
Well, it's interesting you mention academia, because your discoveries really do not fit within that Darwinian theory. I mean, if archaeologists were really honest, they would step back and, say these, whether you want to call them alignments to occult sciences and everything else, I mean, they've really taken great lengths to make sure information is very much obfuscated and subdued. And, for example, you found from DNA findings and theories about the mysterious elongated skulls and artifacts. In fact, you were in Peru this year, Corral, one of the oldest ancient cities in the Americas. Tell our listeners about, what's really interesting, you have a very interesting culture built. You have advanced disciplines in geometry, engineering, astronomy, architecture, very complex sites, and it really begs the question, I guess, L.A., where did this knowledge come from? Because, you have a high level of very, obviously your research has brought you to a really complex level of, the fact that there's an agenda in archaeology that doesn't seem to, see the light of day. Again, goes against the Darwinian paradigm. So, with these ancient Peruvians, tie in your DNA findings, get into the Paracas people, maybe they could be a Nephilim tribe, and then springboard into one of the unwrapped baby mummy skulls that was buried for 2,000 years that you found.
I'd love to. The DNA evidence, first of all, samples were taken out of Peru about 3 or 4 years ago now by the late Lloyd Pye, who was the possessor of the Star Child skull. And they were given to a geneticist who worked on them and told a friend and colleague of mine, Brian Forrester, about them, who emailed me. Brian released it and created an internet firestorm. He was attacked viciously. Oh, these samples were taken out illegally. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Well, no one, who's the geneticist? Who's this? Where did this come from? But I spoke to the geneticist, and Christians did the same thing. And certain ministries, it's a contaminated, there's also Nephilim, blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Everybody needs to take a big, deep breath here. First of all, we are in the process. We have 9 samples that are in Peru that were taken from Senor Juan's Paracas History Museum under the aegis of a Peruvian archaeologist. He has the samples. We are working with 2 archaeologists here in the States, one and another one in Oviedo, Spain, to get the proper paperwork together to the Minister of Culture from Peru to get the samples out to be tested. Now, this begs the question, first of all, why hasn't anyone done this before? I mean, hello, McFly, why hasn't it been done? The Julio Teo Museum has 10,000 skulls. Not one of them has been DNA tested. When I spoke of a director on there, I offered, we'll do testing for you. Well, you've got to go to the Minister of Culture. Well, don't you want to get the DNA testing? Yeah, but you've got to. Can you grease the wheels? No, but you got to. It's just unfreaking believable how no one, will take the step. I'm not even an archaeologist or an anthropologist. I have no letters after my name, no formal training, but I read voraciously, and what I don't know, I ask the experts. Will you tell me? The geneticist told us that the mitochondrial DNA, segments of the mitochondrial DNA, did not match anything in the genome, in any of the databases that they had. Nothing. Not Denisovan, not Neanderthal, nothing. Now, okay, that's completely inconclusive. I get it. But, academia attacked us, Christians attacked us, and I had nothing to do with it. Lloyd Pye was the one that took the samples out. Brian Forrester had nothing to do with it, as far as I know. Lloyd Pye took the samples, and he's no longer with us. So the geneticist, after Lloyd Pye passed away, the geneticist got a hold of Brian, who then got a hold of me, and I've spoken to a geneticist numerous times, and I'm in constant communication with him, basically, letting him know where we are and getting the 9 samples out. We are desperately trying to get those samples out. What's interesting is these elongated skulls. If our hypothesis is true, that when the conquest of the Levant, Israel, the Promised Land, happened about 3,500 years ago, many of the Nephilim tribes, we posit that when the slaughter began, because they're hybrid beings, they fled. They left the area. Some went northward into the Americas. Others went perhaps across the Atlantic, which is very easy to do, winding up in the Gulf of Mexico and populated that way. They could have sailed down the Gulf of Mexico and gone across what is now the Panama Canal and settled in Ecuador and Peru. They could have gone the other way and out the Red Sea and come across that way. All we know is that the Paracas people show up in the area right around the timeline of the conquest of the Levant, around 3,500 years ago. The culture that they have springs up from nowhere, and these are where the elongated skulls are found. No other place that we know of. Let me back up on that. There are elongated skulls all over the planet. So that's what I'm saying. What I'm trying to get at is the Paracas culture are the skulls with the elongated skulls. The Wari culture, the Nazca culture, the Moishe culture, which comes afterwards, do not have elongated skulls. Only the Paracas culture does. Some of them are cradle headboarded. We get that but others we do not think are cradle headboarded. This is why it's so imperative to get the DNA, because only the DNA testing will let you know. I was at an osteological museum here in the States. I won't tell you where it is. They had 6 skulls from Paracas that were donated to them in 1992. I offered to test the DNA. Now these are men of science, okay? And I offered a $5,000 contribution to the building of their new museum, which got their attention, but they declined. Why? They didn't want to be associated with my work. What are you afraid of? What are these scientific men of letters afraid of?
Right.
And look, if I'm wrong, great, I'm wrong, fine. But if the DNA evidence shows that there's an outside agency manipulating the genome, which doesn't match anything in the database, my gosh, guess what? The world ain't flat anymore. You know? And that's what we need. I mean, these are men of letters, men of science, afraid, you might hurt the integrity of the skull by taking a very small piece of bone off. Where? I mean, I can't even believe it. I'm incensed. You can tell that I'm incensed. This is what we're up against. And everything, Sheila, is controlled. All the information is controlled.
Sure
we have to have a university. The archaeologists that will write this prospectus, basically, to the Ministry of Culture in Peru, will be tied in to a university. Otherwise, it won't go anywhere. Otherwise, it's a flat-out no. In other words, if you're an archaeologist and you're not part of a university and you want access to this stuff, they'll just flat-out deny you. And the reason why it's tied to a university is because everything is controlled.
Yeah, but that's a nightmare.
All the information is controlled, Sheila. All of it.
Well, what happens when these things don't match the genomes and the genetic markers in their databases? That is exactly the point. You're disputing again proof that endangers their Darwinian paradigm. So they attack the people, not the evidence. Well, what's interesting is, flipping gears a little bit, one of the interesting things I found about this mummified elongated skull, the baby skull, this was interesting because, L.A., my family is Native American from Montana, and I know our elders talked about a race of red-haired giants, very cannibalistic, tall, super beings.
There you go.
And that's really an interesting shift in what's typically presented, isn't it?
Well, it is. We have one site in a location which I won't mention, and we have. I've gone up there. I protocoled the chief and the medicine man. I've been to the site. I know that these mounds were excavated in the 60s, but not. Again, can you see the report? Well, you could for a while. Now it's been redacted, so you can't see it. We've got a copy of the report stating that the remains that were found, they didn't say the height or anything like that, but they said the remains that were found were not that they were not akin to any known Native American tribe. Bingo. And so the letter we've written to this one particular tribe, and Sheila, if you can help us out here, it'd be great. But I'm working with Chief Joseph Riverwind on this, who's a war chief from the Taino tribe, which is down in Puerto Rico. And Chief Joseph and I were up there, and we protocoled the chief of this one particular tribe, and went to the site, and we wrote this. The three of us, Chief Joseph's wife, Laura Lynn, and myself, and Chief Joseph all worked on the letter, basically stating that, with all due respect, we do not believe that these are Native American remains, number one. Number two, your oral tradition speaks of red-haired cannibalistic giants, which the white man has discounted as mythos. Part of what we want to do is to prove the Native American oral tradition. And I have spoken, and on the record, it'll be on the trail of a Nephilim 2, which will come out sometime in late October. And I've spoken to Chief Joseph Ateno, who talks about that, the Cherokee, who talks about the red-haired giants, the Navajo people.
Sorry, L.A., I just want to throw this in, because where I was going with that, just to clarify for the audience, was that when you exuded in Peru this mummified skull baby, I mean, the hair color was strawberry blonde, and that
blonde.
Yes, and that's quite something, isn't it?
That's telling. That's not Native American.
Yeah.
Not Native American.
Very much.
Nor is red-haired cannibalistic giants.
And you got to wonder when you're exuding something and, they're wrapped in these tapestries or silks, you have to wonder, most people in antiquity used very extensive wrapping and tapestries, and you got to wonder where that comes from.
Well, you were talking about Corral, one of the most ancient city in the Americas, at least that we know of, and that's in Peru, north of Lima, about 3 hours. And I was there just a few months ago, and what I saw was astounding. Because you've already mentioned it, Sheila. There's advanced geometry, there's mathematics, there's engineering, there's construction, architecture. I mean, all this stuff just comes out of nowhere. And the complex, it looks very similar to Teotihuacan, which I've got a stack of about 12 books here that I'm weeding through, all on Teotihuacan. And it's the same thing. Teotihuacan rises up thousands of years later, much, much later than Corral. But where does it come from? And why are these people doing this stuff on a Monday morning? What motivates them to create these edifices? And Teotihuacan is known as the city of the gods. So, and Native Americans talk about the star people. Some outside agency is coming down here, in my opinion, and dispensing this knowledge, and does it in these different locations. These entities that are here are worshipped as gods. Literally, they are worshipped as gods because they can do things. They can perhaps move objects. They are perhaps telepathic. They have other powers and other knowledge which mortals at the time do not have in their possession, and so they are worshipped as gods. And we get some of this stuff from Greek mythos, Hercules, and the pantheon of Greek and Roman gods. I think there's a connection to the fallen angelic host, and I think that it happened here in the Americas, North, Central, and South America.
Well, you cover a lot of abduction phenomena at great length in your books. Obviously, you believe they're creating a hybrid race in the last days. I mean, so Daniel 2:4-2 really talks about this word cleave, and I think it's so interesting because it's the same word in Genesis in regards to marriage. So, in alien abduction scenarios, you talk about how they come and take people, they impregnate women, the fetus gets taken. It reeks of that back to Genesis. So you could say maybe this is some kind of diabolical breeding program that started in ancient time, because it really smacks of that, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and you've done your homework. I can tell by what your questions are incredibly erudite. My hat is off to you, Sheila. You've really done your background work and you've done your homework. That's exactly true. The abduction phenomena goes back to Genesis 6. And interesting, you talked about the chapter in Daniel, and this is the work of my friend and colleague Jim Williamson, who talks about that word cleave. They will not cleave to them. In other words, they're not given and taken in marriage as they are in the Genesis 6 account, which is exactly what we see happening today. There's no marriage given to the women who were taken. And in Genesis 6, the fallen angels came down, they took the women and created this race of hybrid beings known as the Nephilim. That's not happening today. The women are taken. And look, people out there, I get this all the time, they scoff at this and they laugh. What evidence do you have? Well, we've got some evidence, and we've talked about this in our Watcher series with the implants. And these implants, and people scoff at them too, but when you're in an operating theater, and we've done this, in Watchers 7 and Watchers 8. And we did a whole, the entire process is on film, from Bill talking about how he was abducted when he was 5 years old, and the implant is there, to the x-rays, to the Gauss meter, which measures the magnetic field, to a stud finder, which shows a metallic object, to a CAT scan, which once again shows that there's a metallic object below the knee, to an ultrasound, which then shows, yes, there's a metallic object below the knee, to the day when we're in the operating theater and we can't find the object. And one simple prayer to Father God, to El Elyon, the Most High God, breaks that power of the fallen one, and all of a sudden the object is there, and we take it out, and then 2 days later we're at SEAL Lab looking at it through a scanning electron microscope. So the skeptic will say there's no physical evidence. We're saying we've got major physical evidence, and we have a trail of evidence, and we have testimony from every step of the way, and it's documented and it's on film. We're one of the few, Watchers is one of the few documentaries which actually shows all that from beginning to end. So, the government must be doing it. Well, that's what you're saying. So, instead of sitting there in your ivory tower and, telling us how we're all crazy, why don't you go out and prove us wrong? Why don't you go find someone who's got an implant in them, and you do the testing, and you spend your time and money? And, of course, no one does that. But we have. We spend our time and our money, and that's what's amazing about Watchers. 6, 7, and 8 talk about the implants, talk about this one man who we call Bill, and traces every step of the way until finally we get the implant out and surgery. And there were forces, Sheila, that knew we were there, that had cloaked the device, that shut it down. We could not find it with the ultrasound machine. The Gauss meter flatline. The studs finder went off everywhere on Bill's body. It was like the thing was being cloaked.
That you felt compelled to pray, especially when you're standing in a room of non-believers.
Yep.
The object, and then it reappears. I mean, spiritual warfare is
spiritual warfare 2.0.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Well, I mean, if you look around, though, whether these unscrupulous hucksters that want to suppress this information, I mean, just look at biblical, the seed, the genetics. The Levitical law always refers to bloodlines, and, contaminating the bloodlines. Look at back to Noah, he was the only perfect man that didn't have a corrupt bloodline. If you look at Matthew, springboarding from that, Genesis 3:15 also talks about putting enmity, that's commonly referred to as a battle between Jesus and Satan. And it's interesting because if you look in Matthew 24:37, so as the days of Noah, isn't Jesus saying there the conditions before the flood will reemerge in the last days? That is, whether or not these atheist schools want to, balk at our information, the Bible lays all this out very clearly from Genesis 6 to Daniel 2:42 to Genesis, a lot of places in Genesis, but also Leviticus. It all interconnects, doesn't it?
No, it does, and that's what's amazing about being a student of biblical prophecy, because all this is prophecy. When Jesus is saying, you mentioned that scripture in Matthew, they were eating and drinking. Well, who is the they that Jesus is talking about? And it's not people, and he's pointing back to the days of Noah, and that's why Genesis 6 is astounding. Unless we come to a grips of what's really going on in Genesis 6, when we get to Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, we don't have a clue as to what he's talking about. We don't understand. It's like it just water off a duck's back. It's like, well, I guess he's talking about people. He's not. They are the fallen angels, and that's what's so critical about the right interpretation of Genesis 6. And it amazes me, unless we understand that, we don't understand the seed war, which is one of the first early prophecies of the Bible, where Father God is basically saying, look, your seed, the seed of the serpent, is going to be at enmity, at war, essentially, with the seed of the woman. That's exactly what we're seeing today with the abduction phenomena. What amazes me is that so many of these pastors out there, and look, I mean, I'm not bagging on you guys, for those of you who are listening. There are a lot of good men out there who are in the trenches, and we speak at a lot of different conferences with a lot of pastors. A lot of pastors are waking up. Hallelujah. But there's also a lot out there that won't touch us with a 10-foot pole, and they're afraid to look at it. And yet, and this is the problem, and we talked about this earlier, we're the people that believe in the virgin birth, floating axe heads, talking donkeys, two gold coins that appear in the fish of mouth, guys that are swallowed up by whales, regurgitated 3 days later, water that turns into wine, men that walk on water, staffs that split the Red Sea and people walk across on dry land, and on and on and on and on and on it goes. The Bible is rife with supernatural events. We are warned that Satan will come with all signs and lying wonders. 2 Thessalonians tells us about this. So why are we surprised? We should be looking, if we are in the last days and the end times, to what is manifesting on the planet. And if it's not this, then you show me what it is. And that's what it is. It's manifesting like crazy on the planet. For those of us who have eyes to see and ears to hear, for those of us who scoff at it and won't do a modicum of research, then like this one person who was trying to tell me that there were no such thing as Nephilim, do your homework before you write a paper like this. Do a modicum of research before you get on your high horse and tell us that this stuff didn't exist, because it did. And I stand on the shoulders of great men like G.H. Pember and Clarence Larkin, and my mentor, Dr. I.D.G. Thomas, who passed away last year.
Right.
I stand on their shoulders. And, it's like these guys aren't fruitcakes. And Pember's talking about it over 150 years ago, what it was going to be like. And Dr. Thomas warned about it in his classic book, The Omega Conspiracy. And Clarence Larkin wrote about it. I mean, there are many, many good biblical scholars with sound exegesis who looked at these passages and warned of what was coming. Guess what, folks? It's here. It is here. And the church really needs to wake up and understand the unprecedented, tenuous, tumultuous times that we are living in.
Well, when you go back to the Tower of Babel, Nimrod becomes Gibborim, a Nephilim. Yep. If you study it out in the Hebrew, it almost appears like there's this weird ritualistic sex magic going on. You fast forward to Lot, to Aleister Crowley, to Jack Parsons, to the Nazi backbreeding. The common thread here, I guess, is this very nefarious, malevolent, ritualistic sex magic. That's really what's going on here, isn't it?
Well, the sex magic is all through the Scripture, and that's what people don't get. How is it that when Moses shows up to Pharaoh, there's a whole cadre of Egyptian sorcerers who can duplicate the first 3 plagues? Think about that. See, the church doesn't get this. It just drives me crazy. Where does it come from? Why is it already in place? There's a whole worldwide paradigm that's going on here. They're already adepts. They're already working it. They're already doing it. So Moses shows up. He goes, that's nothing. We can do the same thing. And they do. They duplicate the first 3 plagues. And they finally go, oops, this is the real God here. And they fade from the scene. But look, this stuff is happening. Ritualistic sex magic. Look at Aleister Crowley. Look at Parsons with Babylon working ritual that he did. Look at the rituals that happened in every single city. Look, I was a music director before I started doing this full time, and I was, that was my, sort of tent making on some level. Lord had me do that for like probably 25 years, off and on. And I did other things too, but I got into writing like in the 90s is when I started to write and really research and take it seriously. But I was a music director at Malibu Vineyard, big church, about 3,000 people. Let me get a slip of water here. And typically, I would show up on Sunday morning and be the first person to show up. And if the service was at 9 o'clock, I'd be there at like 7:30. I'd open the building up, turn on the soundboard, get things ready, turn on the air conditioner, all that stuff. Just part of what I did. Got there early, get everything set up, make sure everybody was going to be okay, blah, blah, blah. So one morning, 7:30, I drive up, get out of my car, and I start to walk in the building, and instantly I'm taken aback by what I see. There in front of me, in front of the front doors of the building, is a large circle painted in black. And in that circle is a pentagram. And in that pentagram are 2 candles which are still burning, and set between the 2 candles is a slaughtered dove. That is ritualistic magic.
Yes.
And that church, Malibu Vineyard, had the worst split I've ever seen. 6 months later, there was no more Malibu Vineyard.
But I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, look at Werner von Braun, the card-carrying Nazi rocket scientist. He admits they get their technology from these evil alien entities. And look at the Catholic Church now, LA. They really seem to be taking an interest in our alien saviors. I mean, the Pope coming out with statements we've never heard from the Vatican, is on record saying, we're going to be baptizing aliens, and the fact that the Catholic Church is welcoming them with open arms, and now, move towards the rumblings in the Middle East. When you connect the dots of your research, could we be moving toward some type of event, some kind of trigger of the supernatural? I mean, because, all this talk about, aliens, this would be the perfect scenario to stage a contingent for them to pose as our, saviors, wouldn't it?
Well, that's what you just outlined is what I call the coming great deception, and that's exactly what is going to happen. There's going to be an event, more than likely a nuclear war, probably think the Middle East here, and, and I've blogged about this incessantly. The globe is wired together because of the satellites, because of the Internet. Everything is wired together. When the Fukushima earthquake at 9.0 or 9.2 happened off the Fukushima Prefecture in Japan, we saw the tidal wave in real time. That was real. That wasn't taped. That was real because of the satellites. Helicopters are up there. They're filming the whole deal, and we're watching it live. And that's where we are. When Oswald was shot by Ruby, that was live TV, and we all saw it. Well, that was in the 60s. Now it's like, are you kidding me? It's at the speed of live, and it's global. So when a nuclear event happens, and that's my hypothesis, and this is based also, the late David Flynn talked about the same thing. We both got there together, that he believed, as I do, that there's going to be some nuclear event which will cause the greatest amount of collective fear that humankind has ever experienced together as a collective, because we're wired together. And
we're really going to start seeing a lot more manifestations, I think, because, I think it's you that talks about this sort of cosmic battle that's been raging forever, but it's really about to spill over into our everyday life a lot more. We're seeing more frequent physical manifestations, but it's really going to ramp up and become more alarming as time goes on, isn't it?
Absolutely. It already is. We're getting 1,000 to 2,000 UFO sightings per month. Crop circles, cattle mutilations, the abductions. The phenomena continues unabated, unchecked. When you have someone like, Paul Hellyer, the former Canadian Defense Minister, come forward and state unequivocally that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead, what do we make of that? What is it going to take before people wake up and understand that something is happening, and it's not good? And the Vatican's already on board with it. Chris Putman and Tom Horn in their groundbreaking book, Exo Vaticana, talk about that. And we interviewed Chris, I think, for Watchers 7.
Right.
And, that's what's going on. This stuff is happening, and most people are in la-la land and won't deal with it.
Well, what's really interesting is even the mainstream is talking about it more and more. And even the Royal Academy of Science, of all things they could have picked to talk about at their big 350th anniversary, they picked the giant topic, are we alone in the universe, and what are the implications for that? Because it's always this very malevolent, I believe it's malevolent, but it's always guised as very benevolent. The nice little aliens are who are going to come to, give us their technology and, we come in peace. That's really perpetrated, isn't it?
That's where it's headed. Look, I think that the U.S. and many of the governments on the planet know exactly what's going on. And at some point there's going to be disclosure. We're already seeing what I would call soft disclosure in this country, where the news media now, Bob and Ted will be the anchors on some local news channel, and, well, Bob, those little green men are back. That's right, Ted, they are. And here's Frank in the field to tell us about it. Well, we saw lights in the sky, but we're not sure what they were. And here's, and they just, and that's soft disclosure. And that's what they do. And everybody yucks it up, and don't worry about a thing, And then they'll right after that story, they'll cut into, well, fire in Kensington tonight, and 8 people hurt. It's just like, what? But that's how it's done. That's how it's done.
Well, would it be fair to say? I think about when Jesus calls unclean spirits, spirits of progeny of the giants. Cursed to wander the earth bodiless until the day of judgment, when the Son of Man returns. When you have possessing spirits, indwelling demonic spirits, you mentioned a legion that can inhabit the body and soul. People who dabble in the occult have no idea what they're doing, and I think we as believers have to really be, very much watching and paying attention to what's going on, because, as believers, we have the authority over them, but, this can get very insidious, can't it?
Well, look, we have authority over them, and I get that, but I just came through a very, very difficult period for the last 8 months where I was really being hit, and I mean hit hard. Really hit hard. And it was very unpleasant. And I put my armor on every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, I'll be reminded. And it was very intense. Look, what is coming is unprecedented, Sheila. That's all I can tell you. Hopefully the church gets taken out before it really gets too bad. But we're already seeing stuff, and that's what the people. And look, I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. That's what I hold to, and I believe in that. But on the other hand, we're already seeing stuff. How much more are we going to see before we get taken out? How bad is it really going to get? It's getting really weird. And let me just give you a quick roundup. You got the Eyjafjallajökull volcano and the Bardarbunga volcano. The Bardarbunga is a super caldera in Iceland. Eyjafjallajökull blew a couple years ago, and when it did, it closed the airspace over northern Europe. Now he's got Yellowstone, and we can't get a straight answer out of anybody with Yellowstone. The asphalt's melting. I mean, is something about to happen there? We've got the constant ring of fire, which is happening with the earthquakes, starting from Alaska down the west coast of North, Central, and South America. We get very large earthquakes in Mexico, 7.0. We got one in Peru a couple of weeks ago, 7.5. It swings out to Vanuatu, which is always that's the home of the 7.5, and then New Zealand and Australia, and then back up at Japan, which talk about Fukushima, and 9.0, and then it swings over to Alaska. Well, the West Coast really hasn't been hit. There was one in San Francisco, but Los Angeles has not had one in over 20 years. We're overdue for one. The 9.0 Fukushima hit the reactor there, and the San Onofre reactor is very similar to in Los Angeles, outside of L.A., very similar to what happened in Fukushima Prefecture. Now we're getting radiation leaks from the number 4 reactor, which has been going on continually, and it has not stopped, and no one talks about that. Then we've got the Arab Spring, which has turned into the Arab Winter, which has turned into the Arab Spring, and it goes on and on and on with the civil war in Syria with Bashar al-Assad. Over 250,000 Syrians have been killed. People have been displaced, millions of people displaced, and the war has not stopped. ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq, or Syria, Iraq, and the Levant, ISIL, that's the original name, is Islamic, according to our president, who's trying to tell us that, ISIL is really not Islamic. Excuse me, Barack Obama, Hussein Obama, with all due respect, sir, you are POTUS, and the office allows me to give you that respect, or dictates that I give you that respect. What about Islamic State of Syria, Iraq, and the Levant don't we get? It is Islamic, and this is what's going on. But more than likely, ISIL was trained by CIA operatives in Jordan, and they were there to depose and overthrow Bashar al-Assad, the lion of Syria, which they have not been able to do. They turned rogue, and the rest is history. So the Middle East is more of a conundrum than ever. We see Hamas in the south in Gaza. We see Hezbollah in Lebanon, armed to the teeth. Hamas is just rearming. At some point, the rockets will fly. We've got Iran, which is trying to build the nuke, and it only has one reason, to cut off the head of the snake, who they think is Israel, to destroy the Zionist regime. We get it over and over and over again, and yet the world does nothing about it. Iran does not want nuclear energy for peaceful means. Hello, McFly, and that's what's going to happen. And so Israel have no choice, and this is why we're looking at Psalm 83 war, which my friend and colleague Bill Salas has written about. It is going to happen. Israel have no choice but to cut the heads off of 3 different snakes because they're surrounded. And Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. They're going to have to raid the Bashar reactor at some point. Then you got Putin doing flyovers in Europe. You got the whole Ukrainian thing. You got the nutcase in North Korea, which every now and then when he's got nothing else better to do, he starts, letting missiles fly and threatening the South and all this other nonsense. Then you've got BRICS, and this is alarming, folks. You've got Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS. That's the anagram. And what they're trying to do is get the world off the petrodollar, which has been in place since World War II, and go to the yuan as the default currency. I believe it may happen sooner than we think. With trillions of dollars of debt, we've got no financial credibility anywhere. Watch the gold and silver market. Watch what's going on. And this is huge. If it happens and it's a default, if they move out of the petrodollar as a default currency and move to the yuan, it's game over. It is game over in this country. You will see the economic collapse of America. One more thing, and then I'll stop, but I could continue here. You've got the threat of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse weapon, which is my greatest fear. Congress has had the ability numerous times to go back and beef up the grid, the electrical grid, because when an EMP happens, the grid shuts down. It's over. And it doesn't come back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It doesn't come back more than likely for a year. And if that happens in the winter, millions of people will die, because life as we know it goes back to pre-industrial revolutionary war times. Industrial revolution. And that's, 150, 160 years ago. That's all it is. And the refrigerator doesn't work, the car doesn't start, your microwave doesn't happen, you can't clean your house, the heater doesn't work, nothing works. you go back to pre-industrial revolution time, which means you're basically back not to the Stone Age, but you're looking at wood fires, coal fires, and horse and buggy. That's it. That's what we got.
Well, yeah, I mean, we are getting pummeled 6 ways to Sunday, and as horrid as everything you just talked about is unfolding, I think the overarching bigger connection is that at the very top of this unholy orchestrated destruction is Lucifer. I mean,
yes.
The ultimate evil kingpin,
yes.
the granddaddy of evil, whether it's ISIS beheadings, economic meltdowns, this is a thick stew of satanic soup, really. And I like what Steve Quayle uses all the time, dumb unto death. And if people, I mean, seriously, we are supposed to be looking and watching the affairs of the earth and being wise as serpents. And,
yes.
People perish for lack of knowledge. So
That's
living
it.
with our eyes open is imperative. But ignorance is getting worse in the so-called church, isn't it? I mean, you talked earlier about someone who I talk about all the time, the Joel Osteens of the world. We need very strong men right now, Christian men that are really tapped into the Holy Spirit, because, I mean, what does it talk about? Even the elect will be deceived in the last days.
Even the elect will be deceived whenever possible. Absolutely. And this is where we are. This is why it's unprecedented, tenuous, tumultuous times we're living in. And unfortunately, with all due respect to Mr. Osteen, who I've never met, I'm sure he's a fine guy, but with everything that's happening, Jesus gives us the playbook. Wars and rumors of wars, famines and pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places, troublesome times, men faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth. Be like the days of Noah. He gives it. There's the playbook. And we either perish, like you said, for lack of knowledge, which is exactly what's happening now, or we have to ask ourselves, and I just gave you the world wrap-up very quickly, what's happening on the planet. And I didn't touch the animal fish die-offs or the record temperatures going on or the mini ice ages that's happening and all this other stuff. I mean, it is unprecedented. Earthquakes all over the place. Look at the Ebola virus now. Over 2,500 people already killed. The virus is mutating. This could become a pandemic. And this is serious. This is real serious stuff.
Well, and look, I mean, when you were talking, obviously you mentioned Tom Horn earlier. I mean, he's talked a lot about these chimeria, the half alien, half reptilian, half human. I mean, we're always being set up. The Hollywood hucksters like to inundate us, whether it's the movie Contagion, which I really recommend if people want to get a good little segue into our show this week, at the end of the week, when we talk about the very nefarious, Bill Gates and it's insidious what's going on with this Ebola virus, who owns the patent, who owns the mandated vaccinations, what's coming. I mean, we are absolutely just getting inundated, are we not?
Yeah, it's a managed agenda, as Chuck Messer calls it, but it is.
Yes.
It's a carefully managed agenda. And look, why would Obama, not shifting gears, but it's all part of the same ugly head, why would Obama allow tens of thousands of illegal children into the country? What's the point of that? Because once again, it'll break the back of the country, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take down America. Who are they? Military-industrial complex, the secret government, the elites. But just go to the Georgia Guidestones. It's all right there. They want to cull the population. They want the demise of the United States.
Well,
and certainly the Christian population.
One of the questions, of course, changing gears a little bit, I had a lot of people ask me this before the show. Please ask a LA about the black-eyed children. I've got that for months now. I mean, obviously, there's some very, I think they're hybrid children, but I'd really like to get your take on what you think of these, because they're actually appearing everywhere.
Yeah, I believe, and so does David, I can't think of his name, that's just bizarre, who we interviewed in Watchers 5, about it, and David, we agree. We're looking at, they appear as children, but they're far older than that. They're hybrid beings of some kind that didn't quite make it, and they're sort of the avant-garde, the advanced guard. They leave when the fear has, or the greatest climax of fear. That's when their job is done, and they leave. The black-eyed kids, I have not gotten any reports recently, but they do come in from time to time. And these so-called children will show up, and when they do, there's usually a knock on the door. And you hear when the woman or the man goes to the door, they will they'll look down, and there's these two kids, and they've got baseball caps on. And one of the kids will say, is it food time yet? And the man or woman will go, well, what do you kids want? I mean, food time? What are you saying? And it's like, it's very, very bizarre. And at that point, the kids will look up, and their eyes are all black, and that's
yeah, and these are not black contact lenses, people. Just a heads up.
Yeah, it's not black. And this is David Weatherly. I just Googled. I couldn't say David Weatherly, who we interviewed, and David's interviewed. Look, I interviewed a 16-year-old kid. Okay, and this is just my encounter with it. Not my personal encounter, but it's one step away. I interviewed the kid who was 16 at the time and who had an encounter. This was his encounter, which is, and I told David Weatherly about it, who wrote the book on black-eyed kids. It's not contact lens, and these people aren't crazy. The kid's babysitting his 12-year-old sister or his 9-year-old sister, and his parents are gone. He's watching TV. All of a sudden, the lights start to flicker. The internet doesn't work. The doorbell rings. There's a knock on the door. He goes to the door, and this kid with blonde hair is there with his head down. And the kid wants to come in. And the guy goes, well, what do you want? And then the kid looks up. It's the black eyes. He slams the door, goes running up, and gets to the foot of the stairs. He looks down. There's a window. He can see the front porch. The kid's not there anymore. There's no way for this kid to hide. He lives in a place, upscale neighborhood. Everybody's got an acre or two, and there's lawns in front. There's no way this kid, vanished like that. He was terrified, absolutely terrified. So his father contacted me and told me the story, and we prayed. Later on, about a week later, the kid called, and I interviewed him. And basically, he called up and said he was in a backslidden state, and this scared him back into recommitting his life to Jesus, which is what we did on the phone. And he also told me is possibly the gate which opened the thing up. His mother was dabbling in the Ouija board. So that's the open gate which allowed the thing to come through, and there you go. So.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Ouija board. I was just telling Doug, you know this, that you know what the number one comeback for games in North America is now popular and trendy with the youth is the Ouija board. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah. Yep. You're right
on
the money.
Wow, I cannot believe how fast this hour flew. Well, Ellie, I want you to tell people about your newest book and obviously give out your website for people.
It is www.lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. I want to tell you guys something since I got you. Can I have another couple of minutes, or are you guys going to go for a hard break here? Or
Absolutely.
What? Let me tell you what's going on here. I'm about to, and this is an exclusive for you guys. I haven't said anything about this to anyone yet, so this is an exclusive for you. I'm about to release a book, On the Trail of a Nephilim, Volume 2. And there's some intellectual property there, my findings, my research, and specifically a researcher, I'm not going to mention any names, contacted me about 8 months ago, and he knew I had flown out to Catalina, and he asked me, did you find anything there? And I said, yeah, I found a lot of stuff, and he begged me, well, can you just give me one photo, which I did. Well, this gentleman, unfortunately, was in league at that time with a production company, which I didn't know about, and once they had the photo, the company flew the man out to Catalina. They are in post-production. It will be released. My work will be released not under my name, through this production company, through a major television network, probably in November. And basically, they took the picture, which I discovered. No one else discovered. It's my discovery, period. I found it. And I had it tested through 3 different people who analyzed the photographs using computer programs to determine the height of the skeleton that was found on Catalina Island. And the reason why we're able to do this is because Ralph Glidden, the archaeologist, was standing in a recently excavated pit, and in front of him was the giant. And that giant is about 8 foot 9 inches, between 8'6" and 9 feet, which corresponds to the newspaper articles. So, like a fool, I trusted this man and gave him the photograph. And needless to say, I'm actually doing an email blast next week to all of our people in our account. This is an exclusive for you guys. I'm going to show the picture on the blog. I'll probably release this on Thursday. show it on the blog along with the chapter, along with the photographic analysis, because I've got to establish that this is my work, not this particular network.
And the other piece of that is if it's mainstream, I'm sure it'll get all completely botched too, of course.
But, it's only September, and I'm releasing it next week, so I'm on the record with it. It's my intellectual property. I discovered it. Here it is. So there you go.
Well, thank you for that heads up. And L.A., that's really quite frightening, isn't it? How people will go to extents to,
anything for a buck.
Anything
for a dollar.
Well, yep. L.A., God bless you for what you do. You've done
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Years of extensive research, and we wish you all the best. Folks, LA website is bookmarked at weekendvigilante.com. And Doug, wow, what a quick hour. That kind of flew by, didn't it?
Indeed it did, and I just want to thank L.A. for his time. I'll tell you what, I was thank you, Sheila, for conducting that interview. I was taking notes, and I've got to go back and listen to that again because there was so much to what he said. Unbelievable. And he never disappoints. So, with that, Sheila, we're up against the break. I just want to let everyone know you're listening to a very special Saturday edition, the weekend edition with the Weekend Vigilante, Sheila Zilinsky, and of course Doug Hagmann. Together, we are the weekend edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report and the Weekend Vigilante. Kind of a hybrid, if you will. It's fantastic to have you, Sheila, and it really is. You've done such great work, and folks, let me just throw this in here because, and by the way, Sheila has not said word one about this, but please, folks, support Sheila. I mean, go to weekendvigilante.com and certainly support her work. She's working her butt off to get to bring the best guests impossible for our weekend edition. And in fact, next week, Sheila, you'll be taking care of the Hagmann Hagmann Report on Thursday and Friday. We want to thank you for that as well. So you've been doing some fantastic work, a lot of it behind the scenes, a lot of it, ladies and gentlemen, you'll never hear her talk about. And wow, she's just incredible. So
well, thanks for that, Doug. Yeah. And you're right, we are up against the top of the hour. And folks, we're going to be back with stay tuned because we have a very exciting guest that we have not had on the program before, and I'm very excited to bring him on. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be back. The second half is a powerful prophetic minister of God whose prophecies are uncannily accurate. And why wouldn't they be? I personally am amazed at the incredible prophetic gifting God has given this brother. Folks, our guest is Pastor James Crawford from Texas. He's the founder of World House of Prayer Ministries, or World Hops for short. His website is linked at weekendvigilante.com. I'm excited to introduce James to our audience tonight, Doug. So without further ado, James Crawford, welcome to the program, sir. It's a privilege.
Thank you so much, Sheila. God bless you guys. Thanks for having me.
James, you're a mighty prophet of the Lord. That's really my words. I really believe he's definitely given you some incredible prophetic, powerful insights and revelations. Really, at times I think the Lord is releasing the judgment of God like Elijah through people like you. And, he's pressed upon many things over the years with you, shared many things. End time prophetic word is important. Look at Paul and Peter. Paul pronounced judgment. Look at Elijah. Look at John. Share with our listeners why this is very important in these last days.
Well, you can't read the Bible and miss it. If you're not tapping into this aspect of the kingdom of God, you're not going to mature. The church can't mature. We can't be an end-time prepared people. It's just, you can't miss it. And it's obviously there for a reason. But you're going to be offended at the Elijahs that God releases that are going to release this judgment as the early apostles did and the prophets of old. If you're not hungry for the Lord, you'll miss it. And just like you'll miss all the other things that are going to prepare you.
Well, you and I are really on the very same page when it comes to false preachers, especially in these end times. Let's get into what God shared with you about some of these various, well, I hate to use the word preachers, but Rick Warren's, Joel Osteen's, Joseph Prince, guys like this. You had a word from God even before they were on anybody else's radar. This is on record. Walk our listeners through what was revealed to you about these various men.
Sure. First of all, I'll say that I am very careful when I speak for or against another minister. So this is me sharing a heart about that. I have never publicly, until 2008, 2009, ever spoken publicly against another minister, because the Lord had not told me to, and I had not. I believe it was that year. But at the beginning of 2008, the Lord began to really give me fire about this, that we would see a fresh release of false teachings that must be exposed, and the first word that I got that really made my awareness, gave me prophetic energy. One of the first words was, the harlot is swiftly emerging with people like Obama and supporters. Now, when this was after President Obama was already elected, and one of his greatest supporters was Rick Warren. He was he prayed at the inaugural address, and he was just, he was like his little buddy running around and, blessing, and the church was just blessing right along. Since then, they've kind of parted ways, but this was God giving me energy about it. And then shortly after, in 2009, the Lord gave me an angelic visitation with Gabriel and some other angels. I know there were other angels there. I don't know their names. But he began to give me words of knowledge, like the last place you want to be at the end of the age is Joel Osteen's place. The word of the Lord is not there. And another word of knowledge that he gave me was, Joel will not lead my people to repentance. Why would I lead my people to him? Now, from that time, 2008, 2009, till this time, now we're seeing so many others. It's getting so much worse. It's gaining momentum, this false grace, this hyper grace, whatever you want to call it. And Sheila, I pulled up and again, let me say it again. I don't think I can say it too many times, because I'm a pastor that loves pastors. I'm a pastor that loves God's people. But when Revelation 2, when that mantle was placed on me in 2008, 2006, 2007, 2008, I was being prepared in those years. And when that mantle, it's Revelation 2:2 coming to town. The church of Ephesus, the testimony was that you are a people, you, Ephesus, are a church that cannot bear the lying apostles. You can't tolerate them. You've tested them, you've tried them, and you found them to be liars. And it's not that we go out of our way to do it. We don't have to. We just pray, and the Lord says, I need you to speak for me. And, again, I wanted to say that. But when you get ready, Sheila, I could read you a Joseph Prince newsletter from his Daily Grace Inspirations that is just mind-boggling, about how we do not have to confess sin after we become a Christian. The work is done. There's no more need for confession. That's how bad it's gotten just in the last, 2009, the last 5 years.
Well, what's shocking is Joseph Prince has a huge following. So pretty much what he's saying is, your sins are covered past, present, and future. That is really serious, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. It's, you can see why the Lord would raise up prophets and apostles to openly refute this, because these are, this is what, this is just the hour we're in. It's the great falling away. It's just obvious, and many people, unless we sound the alarm, Isaiah 56, unless we bark, the greedy dumb dogs of Isaiah's day would not sound the alarm,
right, and
warn the people. They were greedy dumb dogs that loved to slumber. They lied down, they slept, and so if God doesn't raise up ones that will bark, people are not going to wake up. They're not going to avoid this deception and the falling away.
Well, let's get into the false one-world harlot religion that Jesus gave John the Revelation about in Revelation 17:2. You wrote an incredible book, One World Harlot Religion. Tell people about that book and what you were trying to, what message you were trying to convey there.
Yeah. When he gave me that word of knowledge, when the Lord gave me that word of knowledge, that the harlot is emerging swiftly was the word. The year that President Obama was elected, and until up to that time, I had no grid. I had no understanding, no way to process it, except that I would guess that I got probably 50 to 100 prophetic words, visions, and dreams about it. And to that point, I had never known to even be aware or even to study on the subject. But I can say this, Sheila, as I set this up, around the beginning of 2007, around New Year's, because I always try to pray around the beginning of the year, and I got this word from the Lord, eschatology. I think it was 2007. Eschatology is not an option, it's a mandate. Now, for those that don't know, now Sheila, can you hear me really good as I'm speaking right now?
Your sound seems fine to me. How about you, Doug?
Yeah, not a problem at all, and the needles are moving appropriately, so we're good.
Okay, wonderful. When God gave me, for those that don't know, eschatology is basically the study of the end times. That's eschatology. And when he told me that word, that eschatology is not an option, it's a mandate, he made it clear to me. The fear of the Lord touched me in a new way in this area, so I began to dig into the book of Revelation, and then it was around just after the President Obama was elected that I started studying the harlot in Revelation 17 and 18. When in Revelation 17 and 18 it talks about the harlot that is going to gather and influence many different waters or streams of influence, and we see it in the natural as the streams of influence in politics and the church. We see how so many people are Tony Blair, T.D. Jakes, Rick Warren. They're bringing so many different religions and faiths. We call them interfaith movements. And we see the justice systems. Right now it just looks so good. It looks like this is God giving us unity, but it is a harlot unity. Now, unless we have discernment, we're going to look at that, we're going to go, that's beautiful. But for those of us that are discerning of the times, that are listening to the prophets, and that are praying and fasting, we're going to go, no. 2 John is clear. We talked about this yesterday, Sheila, that it's so clear. I don't know what. Well, I do know they're not reading the Bible because, if you read the Bible, you have to see this stuff and you have to go, where is this preaching? 2 John is so clear. If any man comes and teaches another doctrine other than Christ's, and he goes on to expound on this, that unless they preach And unless they come to the Father through Jesus, they have not Christ, they have not God, and they bring any other doctrine than this. Don't bring him into your house, and don't bid him Godspeed or bless along his vision, or you'll be partakers or sharers of their evil deeds. So this is how we're seeing this harlot emerge. Rick Warren?
Well, it's incredible, isn't it? Because, it's not just a suggestion there. I mean, it's a real admonition, isn't it, to be very careful of the type of doctrine that we are allowing into, our field of vision, I guess, for lack of a better word, isn't it? It is indeed.
It is indeed.
Let's jump into some of the prophecies you reveal, because I also want to open up the phone lines too in the second half, because I know there was a lot of people that recommended you. A lot of our listeners really wanted to bring you on, and of course I do want to extend that to our listeners to have a little bit of time in the next hour, and we've got a lot to cover. So I want to get into some of the many prophecies you reveal. All of these have come to pass. Let's start with one very interesting scenario, and of course we're going to get into quite a few of these, but Gabriel Giffords, talk about that shooting, and there's something really interesting that you said, and it was neutrality is a vote that God will hold accountable, and I want you to really get into that for us.
Sure I will. And I want to I'm going to let my wife find that, Missy, if you would please. That prophecy. I want to be able to possibly read it if she wants me to. You can find it on the desktop. Thank you, sweetie. Yeah, Gabriel Giffords, the day before Gabriel Giffords was shot in Tucson, that morning that the judge was killed, I forget his name, there were 5 or 6 people. I think there were 2 or 3 people that died, and 5, 6, 7 people got shot. The Lord spoke to me the day before. We were going to have a unity revival, and we did, the day before the Gabriel Giffords shooting. Okay, so it actually was the day before our unity revival, so there's 3 days. So 2 days before the shooting, 1 day before the unity revival. I always go and pray to see what God wants me to say. So that day I went to prayer, and the Lord said, James, go in and scream bloody murder. Scream bloody murder and say this: some politicians will die at the sound of my voice. And there's so much other information. That was about a 2 or 3 page prophecy. I don't remember. That's been several years, and honestly, I've had so much ministry since then. I don't remember all the words now. But here's what happened. I prophesied that day. That I believe it was. I know it was the next day, but there you go, Missy. Thank you. Here's the original prophecy of January 7, 2011. Some politicians will die at the sound of my voice. Teach your people about my anger as I am angry with your nation. Revival is at hand, and so is my judgment. Get ready for a truth revival that will separate the true from the false. A global shift is happening now. All false systems of politics will be exposed. Your governors and politicians need to hear this. Forerunner politics are now being brought on the scene. So here's what when I released that, when I spoke that out, that, as you guys must know, that when God gives you a word and you speak, if you don't speak it, many times nothing will happen. Things won't shift. When we spoke it, oh my gosh, that thing happened. I mean, it's so clear, and it just blew me away. But I had several visitations, Sheila, and a lot of people they really get irked about this. But I saw days before this, I saw an angel with it was the most, it was pretty sobering. I saw the death angel that worked for God. And I saw this angel weeping. I mean weeping. Because this isn't a good and a holy angel that, just like us, we don't want to see people die. But God has got to show this side of His wrath. Clearly, the book of Revelation, from Genesis to Revelation, you can't avoid it.
You can. When you were talking about wrath, what came to mind is, that scripture in Psalm 2. It's talking about, the kings of the earth setting themselves and the rulers taking counsel,
right.
and it's talking about, conspiring against God. And what's interesting is, he says, "He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh; the Lord shall have them in derision." I mean, and then he goes on to say, he's talking about, then shall he speak unto them his wrath and vex them in his sore displeasure. I mean, he's talking about, the heathen and what their inheritance is, and that's pretty profound, because when you're talking about breaking them with a rod of iron and dashing them into pieces like potter's vessels, I mean, we're talking about a pretty severe consequence. So whether somebody doesn't want to listen to that or not, I mean, God really doesn't care if somebody doesn't want to hear it or not, quite frankly. It is what it is. I mean, that is, the Bible talks about being wise, and O ye kings of the earth, be instructed, the judges of the earth. I mean, we're talking about fear and trembling, aren't we? His wrath is not something to just shrug off.
Oh, absolutely. Sheila, that's great. It's just music to my ears to hear you say that, because we're in such a drought of some of these truths that are very weighty. I mean, you read the book of Psalms, it's the whole Bible. It's the whole Bible. Especially in the West, we're just, we're asleep. We're asleep, as you guys know. That part of the prophecy where the Lord said that neutrality is a vote. I've heard that a couple times. The Lord's impressed that upon me. When it comes to abortion, Gabrielle Giffords, Gabrielle Giffords, she was an advocate for abortion and same-sex marriage and homosexuality. She's one of these forerunners to establishing this new system of politics, and death is her agenda, because she has put herself in this position, because she is, any person that takes authority on this earth is accountable to God, who reigns over the earth, to implement His kingdom principles in their sphere of authority and influence. That's every father, that's every mother, that's every politician, that's every principal of a school, that's every pastor. And we are going to answer for the Lord in this age and the age to come for whether we operated under those principles. And I'll say this, Sheila. The Lord's made it clear. When He had me release this prophecy on this mega church that's setting people up in Shreveport, He said, unless the intercessors speak, I won't judge some of these people, some of these authority figures, because I give my authority to the people on the earth to subdue and reign over it. Isn't that interesting?
Wow. Well, essentially. Oh, sorry, Doug, but I'm just.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Doug.
Well, yeah, if I can just interject something right here, and we get a lot of emails from people saying, well, why in the world are you fragging your own people? Fragging friendlies, so to speak. You're fragging Christians. Well, this is not what we're doing. So save your emails, folks. But I just want to just kind of interject this, okay? One thing that I learned a long time ago is when you're a pastor, at least to me, if you're a pastor, a minister, you're a leader of a Christian body of men and women, there is an element of love and caring that you better have for your flock or your the people who are under your or within your ministry. To me, the opposite of love is indifference. It's not hate, but indifference. And we're seeing so much indifference right now. And I think that this is what really bothers me the most is you've got men of God, women of God, at least that's what they proclaim, being indifferent on such moral and social subjects as abortion, as same-sex marriage, as, you can go on and on and on and on. These people are leading in mass Christians to eternal damnation. Why in the heck can't people understand this? We've got to find our cojones, I'm sorry, but we've got to find our guts and go out there and say, okay, brothers and sisters, look, what you're doing is wrong. And if you're not speaking against it, then you're part. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And if you're part of the problem,
hey, Doug, I'm going to throw Doug. I got to tell you, this is so alarming because I was on a program with Tim Alberino last night, and I was stunned because he just confirmed another reporting that I got that apparently there's some so-called prophetic person in mainstream that's saying that us fear-mongers, that he got a revelation that the Lord was going to be taking us out. People that are spreading this so-called, doctrines of, the end times, better get ready, better repent, all this stuff. He's calling it fear-mongering, and the Lord has taken us out. Now, does that mean we're going to get taken out by the CIA? I don't know, but, it's amazing. Also, James, I'm sure you can concur with the amount of false preachers and false religion and many false revivals going on. There's a plethora of men, we just touched on it, who are not teaching the gospel and the things of God. But I guess even more concerning is the, loosey-goosey, kumbaya, grace, 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 God's your buddy, anything goes. Christians nowadays, they only have ears for positive, fluffy, as Langford calls them, cotton candy, not fear-mongering like Doug and Sheila and Steve and all these other people. Isn't that stunning?
Absolutely. Doug, I like what you said, and when it comes to releasing judgment, the church and God's people better embrace and pray for this, because the Bible says that when the judgments of God are in the land, a people learn righteousness. And judgment is a blessing. When people under my pastoral care are falling away from the Lord, I ask the Lord to restore them kindly. And then I keep asking, and I keep asking. Then when I see it really getting bad, I will get on my face and weep and ask the Lord to shake and judge. And I've seen them go to jail. I've seen them go to jail. I've seen them, I don't know if I want to speak about all the things I've seen, but I've seen the Lord move. And it is a blessing. The same way that I ask God to heal, I'm not afraid to ask him to kill. 1 Corinthians 5 says when the brother was in that incestual relationship, Doug, this really plays into what you said. It really does. 1 Corinthians 5, I'm there now, and here's what Paul the Apostle said, the great apostle. Verse 1, 1 Corinthians 5, verse 1, it's reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not even named among the Gentiles, that a man would have his father's wife. And you, Church of Corinth, that's my parentheses, you, Church of Corinth, are puffed up and proud, and you've not mourned that this person would be taken away from you. No, the church is tolerating it, right, Doug? They're tolerating immorality. Yep. They won't confront. And he says this, he says, verse 3 and 4, it says, I would that we gather together in the name of our Lord and my spirit with the power, here it is, with the power of our Lord Jesus Christ to deliver this person to Satan for the destruction of the flesh so that his spirit would be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. Now, I can't tell you guys, being in full-time pastoral ministry for 11 and a half years, I preach this very frequently because of the degree of sexual immorality in the churches. And I will say that probably 10% of the people appreciate it and can embrace and flow and accept and digest it. Most of the people get so offended, they deem me creepy.
Nice.
All I've got to
nice.
Yeah, Doug says
creepy.
Nice. all I've got to do is read from the Bible, and sleepy Christians think I'm creepy.
Interesting. Well, I mean, where has the fear of the Lord gone, James, though? I mean, I think it's just so incredible that you used to have a lot of people in North America that had a lot of reverence for God, but where has the fear of the Lord gone? I don't know what to...
Well, we've certainly seen that abated, and I thought when you said that, I thought of A.A. Allen, and an awesome. I just encourage everybody to go listen to this message. It's called "God the Killer," and it's from about 1940, 1950, somewhere in there, and it's just powerful. And he quotes the scripture from 1 or 2 Samuel that where the Bible says God kills, He heals, and He makes alive. And he gives some awesome testimonies of how one testimony was a guy was in his tent, and he prophesied, said, "You're going to die. You're going to die. And if you don't repent, you're going to die." And the guy died like shortly after he prophesied it. He said, "If you don't give your life to God at the end of this, by the end of this tent meeting," he prophesied. A. Allen prophesied. "If you don't give your life to God by the end of this tent revival, you're going to die." And it happened. Where did it go?
So writing on the wall of the tent. I'm sorry. The hand comes down and writes on the wall of the tent. It should mean something. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, that's okay. It's just, Sheila was asking, where did this fear of the Lord go? From even during that revival around the time A.A. Allen was around, he was still a pretty rare breed from what I read about the history of those days. What is that, 60, 70 years ago, whatever that is. We've seen that ebb and flow through, come and go, and throughout church history. The great news is, though we've fallen from that last revival era, we've never seen the truth revival that's coming. Daniel prophesied it in Daniel 11 that there would be a certain breed in the end times of people of an understanding that would be like no other generation, and they're going to teach many. Many will be martyred. Some will fall away and make them whiter. And I believe we're going to see the greatest truth explosion that there's ever been in any generation. I really believe that.
Well, it's interesting. I had a guest on Be the Girl Economist. In fact, Doug and I had him on not that long ago, and he said a phrase I thought was so profound. He said, when I was a kid, I used to think, wouldn't it be cool to talk to Paul? Paul was cool. But he goes, what you're talking about, James, he said, Paul is going to want to talk to us because we are going to witness the greatest time ever, really, aren't we? That's what's coming.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for people that are going to contend for truth in this hour, I mean, truth ain't the going thing, as you guys know, and it really, that's why the Bible's so careful the way that it talks about truth and the way that it says if you add something to this book or take it away. Jesus' name is the truth. God's very name, one of his names is the truth. But for those that will hold to the truth and seek the truth, look, we're going to suffer. just like every other forerunner and pioneer suffered. We may be martyred. I'm hoping that I get to suffer that same fate, just because I want to have a campfire story too. I want to be counted among them. Hebrews 11 is so clear. We'll obtain a better resurrection. Mostly, people are martyred and persecuted for truth. And so I'm encouraging people to be a truth seeker, and I believe that's where we get to, have bragging rights. I know we're not doing it for that, but I love Jesus, and I love truth, and I want, Jesus dangles that thing in front of us and says in Hebrews 11, we'll obtain a better resurrection. And so I thought of that when you said that Paul will want to talk to us. I'm hoping so. We can do things that have never been done, Sheila, ever. And I'm encouraging people to tap into their prophetic destiny in these last days and to suffer whatever they have to suffer to do it, whatever it is.
Well, but sadly, there's, the real God encounter. We don't want just a visitation. We want his habitation. And, he wants us to be a habitation for him, a sanctuary, tried and true, not just a visitation as in the revivals of past, but, where they burnt out, but a habitation where we, James, as his people, and he is our God, intimate, tight, where the fire on the altar never goes out. Where is that? Because, sadly, that's really not very prevalent, is it?
Oh, no. No, it's definitely not the norm. It's definitely not the norm, but we're seeing a comeback, but it's still going to be the few that find, certain things that we may contend for. I think I was reading through some of my old prophecies so I could be prepared for tonight, and one of them was the Lord said that it's going to be a lot easier to get people to pray when he shakes things the way he's going to shake them. There is a global economic collapse coming. The earth has never seen it, and there's some people right now dragging their feet that are going to pray more. And when that happens, the Lord made it clear to me, there will be a truth explosion and glory and revival along with judgment. But truth and revival, too, that the world has never, ever seen. And it's going to be. The Lord has just told me, James, you contend for this. Strive and teach people to pray and contend for it, because if you hold the line on this, I will get my people hungry to pray again. Just lay this foundation, and you pray, and get the few that you can to pray, and you watch, and I will add exponentially. And when my shakings come, where you'll see many, just like in the early book of Acts, a lot of people say, well, how in the world did they ever get 120 great apostles in one room praying, in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 1. Acts chapter 2, well, Sheila, remember, that was a generation where Stephen was where Saul of Tarsus was on the loose killing them, and that'll make you pray.
Well, I guess you could say, yeah, that's really interesting. I guess in these last days, really we're seeing setting of cities of refuge and order. That really sounds like what God's commissioned you to do, isn't it?
Sure it is. Sure it is. Me and many others. It's not an accident. It's not an accident, Sheila, that the nations, all over the nations, there's 24/7 houses of prayer and prophetic worship going on, raising up all over the place. All over the place. And the word cities of refuge keeps coming up, don't it?
And if I can just jump in here, Sheila and sir, it's just not enough to seek the truth. We've got to speak the truth. And I think that the louder that we speak the truth, and the more often that we speak the truth, and the more who speak the truth, the pushback against that by the globalists, the killers, the leaders, even those within the false churches will be pushing back. The walls will close in. Of course, we will have at that point the being pushed underground. But the light that will come from that, from under the ground, will be so bright that people will be attracted to it. So I believe that along with the gloom and doom comes when it gets the darkest, the stars shine the brightest, I suppose.
Beautiful, beautiful. That is, I love it. I love it. Yeah, wouldn't it be such a sad case and a sad outlook on the future if that wasn't the case, Doug?
Yeah, it would be, but it's not going to be. We have that hope, and we're already fighting from a position of victory, and we have to understand that. We just have to find the collective testosterone among the men of the church, and go out there and say, no, not on my watch, and we, what, and I'll say this because I'm a fan of Coach Dave Daubenmire, who goes out and stands in front of abortion clinics and says no, or he preaches out there. We need more action in this generation.
Amen.
We have to, we got to get these people. If you're going to be a Christian, get your head out of your iPad. And I was going to say something else, but I better not.
Well, this is no time for casual Christianity. I mean, seriously, if what's coming, I think that people have to understand that what's coming this is a very serious time, and it's important to get to know the Lord intimately and learn to hear His voice. And this is a must in these last days, wouldn't you say, James?
Oh yeah. This is what burns in my belly, Doug. You don't know. What you said, I was already a minute ago going to flip to Ezekiel 22. The scripture it says, "Will you judge the bloody city, Son of Man? Mm-hmm. Show her all her abominations." And that's the beginning, verse 1 and 2. Ezekiel 22, verse 1 and 2. Now, the end of the chapter in verse 30. And I sought for a man among them that would make up the hedge, stand in the gap for me, so that I would not have to destroy it, but I found no one. Therefore, I've poured out my indignation upon them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their own way have I recompensed upon their heads, saith the Lord God. Now,
wow,
we don't speak, Doug, as you know, we don't speak. On our watch, our very city that we live in could be one of the ones that the Lord wipes off the face of this earth. And guess what? With us and our families in it.
Right.
We've been known to go to the city council meetings and prophesy to them things the Lord says, and it's not pretty and it's not easy, and people pull away and say this or do this. It doesn't matter. We didn't sign up to be popular, and we didn't sign up to. In heaven, we're going to be popular. On earth, of course, in the Western world, we're going to be, radical. But that's not radical. This is Christianity. This is biblical Christianity. I don't consider it radical at all.
Well, speaking of radical, Islam's just permeating our nations. And, of course, we hear a lot of pro-Israel messages. And there's just so many things that are interwoven, so many different messages and deceptively woven false doctrines. And, you just touched on, woe to those preaching any other doctrines. You've got all these, the grace, of course, we talked about that. But I like what you said one time. It's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying. I mean, all these, Mormonism and spin-offs and Jehovah's Witnesses saying, oh, yeah, we're Christians. I mean, all that is very deceptive, but we are in a generation that cannot have kingdom authority. So I think that's really interesting, because even Jude said that, these are people that give you a license to sin. In Jude, it's similar how to, the angels fell, and it's applicable today, is it not? I mean, the curse of Balaam, and in this generation you will be just like those angels that fell. That's huge, isn't it?
Absolutely. I was reading my old prophecies, and one of them, the Lord said, Mormonism and eschatology do not mix.
I'm sure Glenn Beck will love you, by the way, James.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys, are friends with any of these guys, or if you believe some of the things they believe or whatever. So I want to respect unspoken boundaries, because we don't know each other.
Yeah,
so
no,
well.
Glenn Beck is no friend of Sheila Zilinsky or Doug Hagmann. So.
Okay. And here's what, when I saw Christians, Sheila, when I saw Christians speak highly of this guy, I thought, and with him gaining so much sway and so much influence, and then Mitt Romney running for president, I really was concerned for obvious reasons. I'm a blue-blooded Christian, I believe, and just most of your mainstream, doctrines, but when the Lord began to give me revelation that it's not okay for us to think that we should elect someone that appears to have a better moral disposition than another guy, meaning, a lot of Christians are saying, hey, we'd much rather, vote for Mitt Romney because he's a great guy. And I had many family members and friends and Christians that told me things like, you're just too hard on Mitt Romney and Glenn Beck and things like that, because these are good guys that love God. And so I was pretty low-key until guys started to get revelation, and the revelation was simply that they are not kingdom authorities. We need kingdom men and women leading the nation, and here's what he told me. He said, they are not speaking for me. They are not speaking for me. That was the word of knowledge. He didn't say a lot of bad things about them. He just said, do not be deceived. They are not speaking for me. We will listen to anything in America, anything that's nice, anybody that's nice, anybody that claims to love their fellow man and to love God, even Islam. There is no person that needs to come into our pulpits and our studios and speak on behalf of God or to God's people through our platform that do not come to our God through our Savior. The Lord God himself is jealous to protect this, because his Son shed his blood to bring this restoration to the earth. And I would like to say one thing, Sheila. Can I have a second to say this about the history of the world?
Absolutely.
Sure.
I believe this applies. This is what I tell people. I just sometimes preach it here at our ministry and then tell new Christians that don't understand some of this. All right. God had a thought a long time ago, and he said, I think I will create man in my image, call him man, in my image, and I'll write a story. I'm going to write a story. And I'm going to write a book and give it to man so that they can kind of follow along with my story. And every person that I ever put on the earth, I'm going to give them a choice in this story: to love me or hate me, to receive me or reject me. And according to each person's decision, I'm going to predestine their life. If they choose wisdom and they love me, I'm going to predestine a glorious time on the earth and a glorious time after they die. a natural death. And we know Jesus, had to come and die to restore man, and Adam sinned, and there was that that situation. But I'm just looking at the book of Genesis to Revelation here. So the story at the end of it, I want to make it really crisis oriented, and I'm going to put Sheila, Doug, James, and the people in this room listening to me, and the listeners. I'm going to put every human being on the earth at that time, just like every other generation, and I'm going to let them play a part if they want to. And if they seek me and they pray and they're intimate with me, I'm going to give them great insights to what I'm doing, not just the letter of what I'm doing through the Word, which is great, but I'm going to give them prophetic insights and things that I won't give to non-praying people of mine and the false ones that aren't mine. And here's what this, and I'll wrap that thought up with this. This is what I'm encouraging people to do. Luke 21, watch and pray always so that you're counted worthy to escape all these things and to stand before the Son of Man. Watch and pray always. And so for those that watch and pray always, they're going to escape other things. I'll keep them from certain things, but some of them will be martyred because that's their calling. Because when the elders came and, the martyrs came and they said, Lord, how long till you avenge our blood upon those that killed us? And God's response was, shh, just wait. It's not time. I've got other people that I want to die for my name's sake too. Hold your horses, and I will vindicate you among them soon enough. But we get to stand there. And I'm speaking to people that are hungry enough, and that you're getting this, you're living for this, you're dying daily, like Paul said, we die daily. I'm speaking to people now that have that rare something about them that wants to go the extra mile for God to suffer a little bit. And that, to me, listen, if you want to go to another church that doesn't appreciate that, and you're still saved and you make it into make it to heaven, eternal life, more power to you. Hey, there's a lot of good people that are going to die and go to heaven, but this is what we're contending for, and I will not stop issuing these invitations from the Spirit because I know that is my calling.
Well, and as you were talking about that story, I thought, and we are in the final chapter of that book. As Matthew 24 lays out, we're in the days of Noah, and I guess the question is, are we on the ark?
It is. It is. It is for sure. It is for sure. Oh,
well,
yes.
You talked about the economy collapsing. I mean, you got a vision of IRS agents beginning to tyrannically collect finances from people and more tyrannical systems, and it's interesting. There's so many things that you have highlighted, from politicians to very nefarious systems before things have happened, just like with the IRS. It's just interesting. Do you think that we're going to see more people? It talks about your daughters will dream dreams and your old men will dream dreams. I mean, in these days, do you think that's something we can expect more and more, is to have a lot more manifestations of these prophecies?
For sure. For sure. Acts chapter 2, I believe that was a dual or a triple-fold prophecy that in the last days, young men will see visions and old men will dream dreams. And I mean, it's just not as hard to teach people to prophesy as it used to be. Sheila, if you want to know the truth, it just seems like so many people are just, God's given them things that are very powerful. My wife, she had a dream where she was receiving a government check. I know there's a lot of people that are still receiving a pension and disability and things, and we want them to enjoy that and to use that while they're getting it and everything. But in this dream my wife had, there's going to be a time where it's abominable to receive those government favors because you're going to have to bow the knee to Baal to get it. And that's just going to happen. I mean, that's close to the Antichrist system that says worship me or you won't buy or sell.
Right.
But that spirit's going to work in our nation before that Revelation 13 totally matures and develops. But I got that word. This book that I wrote in 2009 called "The IRS Will Stand with the Antichrist." I'll just read you these 5 or 6 prophecies that I got. And again, I had no dog in the fight. I never knew. This was not on my radar, just out of the blue, just a good old, pastor that's praying and prophesying and casting demons out, healing the sick, and running a homeless shelter. And then all of a sudden I get blindsided just after Obama was elected. And here's one of the words: the IRS will stand with the Antichrist. The IRS will shut down every power that's not rooted in the Antichrist power. In a vision, I heard the IRS say, I'm not sure about that ministry. Put them under 24/7 surveillance. We know that's happened even recently.
Yeah.
The IRS, I heard the IRS say, when the economy plummets, they're going to say, we can't handle this, and that's why they must institute a new system, the Lord said. And he said that will be tyranny. We already see that spirit of tyranny working now. He said, he said that the Antichrist will seek to viciously murder house of prayer people. And, this is something that is good. We're going to stand against this evil that comes, and, we're going to get many people are going to get murdered. Some of them already are by government officials, intimidated, as you guys know.
It's a great place to. It is going to get worse. Sheila, we're at the top of the hour. Folks, you're listening. If you tuned in late to Mr. James Crawford, his website, world-hops, HOPS.com, which really is short for House of Prayer. That's world-hops.com. It's off of Weekend Vigilante as well as Hagmann Hagmann. Going to be right back after these brief messages. Back, folks, to our third and final hour of the weekend edition with Doug Hagmann here, the investigator, and of course Sheila Zilinsky, the instigator, as she likes to put it. Her website, weekendvigilante.com, ours, hagmannandhagmann.com, teaming up to bring you the weekend edition. And of course, our very special guest this hour is Mr. James Crawford. And I've got to tell you, folks, if you have not heard of James Crawford, well, you have tonight. And thank you for checking in with us by sending an email through our hagmannandhagmann.com interface. Contact us. Sheila and Mr. Crawford, we've got people listening all across Canada, all throughout the United States. We have people checking in, listening live, even at this early or late hour in Germany, as well as, once again, the Netherlands, throughout the Caribbean, Latin America, South America, and even in South Africa. So I want to welcome all of you. This is truly a global broadcast. We're taking your calls, folks, 661-244-9839. Now, if you're already on the line and listening and would like to ask a question of our guest, just press 1 and you will be connected. And what I'll do right at this point is turn it back to Sheila. But before I do, I just want to say this. We do stand for the truth. And we do stand for morality. I like to say this. God said it. I believe it. That's it, period. And it's just that simple as far as I'm concerned. If I may, Sheila, if I can start out with a question for Mr. Crawford. Do you mind?
Absolutely not. Go ahead. You bet.
Okay. All right. Mr. Crawford, on your website, you've got numerous prophecies, prophetic visions, dreams, and what have you. With the 2008 election, installation of the renegade in chief, Barack Hussein Obama, in office, Is that? Do you see Obama playing the head of the closing scene of this episodic life movie in which we're living?
Doug, please ask me that again a little differently to make sure I understand the question, sir.
All right. We hear a lot about Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, whatever you want to call him. We know really little about him personally.
Yes, sir.
From
yes,
from my investigative research and investigation. I believe him to be a Manchurian candidate at the very least, an artifact or a result of Western intelligence services put here for a very specific purpose politically and from an intelligence point of view to bring about certain changes that perhaps Hillary, that is, or any other man or woman could not do. What is his position biblically, do you believe? Well, what do you believe his position to be biblically to fulfill what kind of agenda?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Yes, sir. I don't have a lot of specifics that I've received from the Lord as far as as far as how deep this thing goes with what knowledge he knows, that what part he is to play, and who put him up to this or that. But I know without a doubt that because he is seared, or because he is sinful and backslidden if he ever was a Christian, or because he is not godly and he's greedy, and that he is used by the Lord and by Satan to usher in the harlot, one world Babylon religion in ways that the American people chose because they elected him, and they made decisions. They would rather have a child murdering politician than they would, ones that didn't believe in abortion. And I just believe that we chose this, and we could have chose wisely, maybe, probably, unless America had already crossed that line. I cannot say. If God gave us over to, the lust of our flesh, so to speak, I just know that President Obama, it's clear to me through the spirit of prophecy that he is ushering in this one world harlot Babylon that we know to be depicted of in Revelation 17 and 18, and there's many others working with that spirit now. I don't know, Doug, if I understand your question correctly. I'm not sure how deep his knowledge of what he's doing goes. I just am not sure, and I'm not sure of how deep some other people's are, but I can tell you without a doubt that they're being used to bring about this end-time one-world government and the Antichrist spirit that has to pervade the nations before Christ, returns.
All right. Thank you very much for entertaining that question. It was a very nebulous type of question, but but you handled it very adeptly, and like I could tell you knew where I was headed with that, and I want to thank you for that. Go ahead, Sheila.
Well, I just also wanted to throw in this comment. I really, truly believe in all the research that I've done over the years that, good old Bathhouse Barry, he is being groomed. He was groomed for a long time. I mean, obviously it really doesn't matter. The fact that he's in office, he is absolutely deploding the economy. He's working in lockstep with the globalists. He is a puppet, I believe. And it really doesn't matter how he got there, why he's there. I think the bigger overarching piece, I think, James, is the fact that he is there very nefariously. And who does he work for? As far as I'm concerned, God says in James 4:4 very clearly I think we can really take some heeding of that. Friendship with the world is enmity with God. And, it doesn't really matter, does it, at the end of the day? He's there. He's just a pawn in the bigger, globally played chess game, if you will. So I think that. Oh, by the way, I just got an email. I'm always picking on Victoria Osteen. I played her during the break when she said, do good for your own self, not for God. But this is really what's permeating the megachurch. I mean, think about this, folks. I can't quite say this enough. When you have the biggest church in America, 40,000 people slammed into a stadium in Texas, that's your neck of the wood, James. I mean, it's pretty staggering when a guy picks up his book, his Bible, and he waves it like his father used to do, but does he ever preach out of it? I'm beginning to wonder. So, save your emails that I'm picking on Victoria Osteen. But we are going to jump to the callers. We have a wall of them. So, James, we'll just take some calls here. Area code 928, welcome to the Weekend Edition with James Crawford on as our guest. What is your question or comment? Hello, can you turn your radio down, please?
Yes, how are you doing?
Yes, good. What is your question or comment?
Well, I was just wondering, had you ever heard that the very next day, the Illinois lottery, I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but the Illinois lottery, the very next day after Obama was elected in 2008, the evening pick 3 was 666, and the evening pick 4 was 779.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think that portends, I guess you would?
James, do you want to give any thoughts on that?
Sure. God speaks to me through numbers all the time, so why not speak through the lottery numbers and kind of confirm what those who have ears to hear already are hearing? Sure.
It's incredible the amount of numerology, they're very intricate. I mean, I've studied really intensively and vehemently this sort of Illuminati symbolism and numerology. And I mean, it's permeated and its tentacles are in everything we see, but it's all, God actually is the originator of numerology, really. I mean, look at the Book of Numbers. I mean, it's very interesting how these satanic kingpins have really twisted God's, everything of God, I guess they twist, don't they, though? That's pretty much a theme.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to take this. I'm sorry. I just want to jump in here real quick and take this opportunity to thank Willis for sending me the book titled Biblical Mathematics Keys to Scripture Numerics. I got to tell you, Sheila and Mr. Crawford, I never knew this book existed. It's called Biblical Mathematics Keys to Scripture Numbers, and there's a lot of information in here, and when you read it, it certainly makes sense, and it does put what that caller's question was, it puts it in perspective. So I'll shut up now and go ahead and continue.
Yeah, Doug, I'm actually in contact with the author of that, and I have been trying to get a hold of several people to really lay that out. And of course, everyone knows we attempted to have Mark Flynn on. I mean, he's just genius level brain at all these various, the links he's made to all these very ancient symbols and numerology and how it all ties in. But we have a wall of calls, Doug, so we're going to get back to the phone lines. Area code 561, you are on the program. What is your comment or question?
Hello, this is Phil McKenzie. I just want to say all the people in the chat room are phenomenal. I'm having a really good time just listening to you guys and talking to them. And I wanted to ask Mr. Crawford, I'm only 27, and I just don't get why we don't impeach Obama or throw him in a meat grinder or do something to get him out. I mean, he lies all the time. It's on video. Can't we do something about it, or am I just silly for even mentioning it? And I'll take your answer off the air.
Sure, that's a great question. It's a great question. I think that, in my opinion, we can't get him out of there. You can't just walk up to him and oust him out. And I think there's enough people that would have done it if they could. But that are talking, that are pretty savvy about politics and the way to do this. I believe that this destiny, that his destiny in these last days has to be fulfilled. It might be, and I could be wrong about this, guys, but it might be, young man, it might be that it would kind of be like trying to oust out the Antichrist once he takes the world stage. He's not the Antichrist, in my opinion, but it might be similar because somebody's got to usher in the one world harlot religion, right, brother? So the bigger question to me that I'm asking people to ask themselves is this question. Am I praying enough to know my place in the story that's got to play out in these last days? And then we'll kind of understand that God's not going to want to take out every wicked politician because now here's where it gets kind of gray area for me and everybody else. Nobody knows everything about everything that's going on right now, but here's some general things that I like to bring make people aware of. Nations choose their fate sometimes by who they elect and put in office. Okay, and with Saul, God told Samuel to tell Israel, okay, it's not my will. I've told you I don't want to give you a king like the other nations have. Remember, they wanted a king like the other nations. He said, okay. Samuel kept coming and saying, God, they're still wanting a king. What do I do? What do I tell them? He said, okay, it wasn't my will, and so now that you have continued to bellyache about this and want something that was not my will, I'm going to give you a king, but he's going to oppress and suppress your sons and daughters. Right? They had to suffer and pay the price of lusting for something God didn't want them to have. All right? You say, well, what were the choices? You know, we could have elected Obama or some other yo-yos. And I say that word graciously because there have been some good people that lost the race before the race ever even began, in my opinion, the last couple of elections. But that's beside the point. We chose this man. I hope that answers the question and at least brings some clarity and a little bit of focus.
Well, it could be, too, James, that, I mean, whether he was elected, there was a lot of voter fraud, he could have been selected, but the bottom line he's in whatever very maniacal form that he was put in. The bottom line is he's there, yeah. And I think that's a really good point that you raised is, there's been lots of constitutional sheriffs that have full authority to go and, arrest him. I talked about this on a couple of shows ago. I've got 30 or more impeachable offenses. Doug and I have both extensively researched his infractions, and it's pretty clear that he's not coming out of there till an appointed time. So I think that's just, I think we're stuck with this huckster, really.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. We've got, like I said, a lot of calls here. I'm going to try to get through them very quickly. And again, if anyone wants this number, 661-244-9839, press 1, and you will get put into the call queue. Area code 231, welcome to the program. What's on your mind tonight on this weekend edition? Hi.
Hello, this is Elaine.
Hi, Elaine.
Just a couple things. Hello, gentlemen, and Sheila. I really enjoy the Saturday edition. I think it's a great thing that Doug and Joe had brought you on Saturday, and I look forward to hearing you and your guests. Just a couple comments. I'm Catholic. I was married to a non-denominational, and I learned a lot of things, going through the church. So, I don't have anything against anybody, but it's very downhearting to hear comments about the church. And, growing up and for a good part of the early part of my life, every Catholic I knew was a good person. and somebody had to tell me that we were bad, you know. And then I was really surprised because I knew that we were. I knew so
somebody
many
had
good
to tell
people.
you were bad. That is kind of interesting, isn't it?
It is. And then I went south, and that was the first time I ever experienced, I think the word is bigotry. And so, I think we have more problems than, bringing up all the bad stuff about fellow Christians, I think that I do think we need to get together a little bit more and, go against the people who are really hurting us. I know there was a lot of bad things that happened in the church, and there was 2,000 years to do it all in. But like I said, there's bad and good in everything. And someday I even expect, and I've said this to my friends, I expect to go underground to be able to practice my faith the way that I believe in it, because the Vatican could go bad, But I think in our hearts we know what is true, what is good, and I think that when and if this does happen, where the Vatican is going to, I don't know what the word is, what kind of word I'm trying to find, do evil things, and it's evident. I think all the people who really know Jesus are going to know it in their heart, and like I say, we would probably be going underground then. So I guess that's
Thank you for your comments on that, Elaine, and I will go ahead, James, and if you want to respond to that, because I've definitely got some comments on the Catholic Church, and I think we have to be very discerning when we're throwing out the word, when we're calling Christians Catholics or Catholics Christians, and Elaine probably isn't going to want to hear what I have to say about it, but go ahead, James.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what her question is. She said several things, and
well, I think one of the things that prevalently stood out in my mind was she was saying that Catholics are labeled as bad, and the Vatican. Well, first of all, I mean the Vatican's not going to be doing evil things. The Vatican's been involved in very insidious, maniacal, nefarious dealings for a lot of years, and I mean, the proof is irrefutable. So, it's unfortunate that I have to say that. And the Bible really refers to the Catholicism as really being, riding the beast, the heart. I'm just throwing it out there that I know the Bible's crystal clear on this, and I've made tons of connections. Tom Horn's written extensively about Exo Vaticana, Petrus Romanus. You might want to go buy a copy of that, Elaine, because to make the statements you made, I'm sorry, I just vehemently disagree with that. But anyway, James, did you want to make a comment on the Catholic Church?
I will share a dream I had years ago. I was praying at a time of separation and praying in a cottage in Georgia, and was fasting, and I had a dream. In the first part of the dream, I walked out the front door of the cottage, and there was a man standing. It was getting dark. There was a man standing out about 20 feet from the porch, and he said, "Hi, I'm the Baptist." Okay, he was about 20 feet, and I could barely see. I could see him, pretty good, but I had to squint to see him. And then in the dream, about 20 feet beyond him and further away from me on the porch, there was a lady, and she said, "Hi, I'm the Catholic," and I could barely see her. I could barely see her. And this is, kind of in my younger years of prophetic ministry, and what I took from that was that, and one of the other words that I received that came to mind was that the Lord, I don't remember if it was around this same time period, but He said God is going to walk across every line of denomination. And what we're seeing is a global prayer movement, and He's calling good Christians from the Catholics that if they come and if they'll come to Jesus on his terms and start watching and praying and receive the Lord, like some of them that I know, some of them are not, true Christians at all. But there's some that were born into the tradition, and they're coming into the prayer movement. And when I say prayer movement, I really mean that they're coming to get saved, because there's so many Baptists, Catholics and so on and so forth that are really just kind of traditional and not spiritual or not even saved. Now, I said that to say this. Here's what I think that dream meant. That Catholics are, just because of their tradition, they're just a little bit more in the dark about some mainstream Christian core values and so on and so forth. But also that now I have known some people that grew up Catholic, and I don't know if you guys ever met any charismatic Catholics that are on fire, and they still go to Catholic churches, and I wonder about it. I'm thinking, well, how can you do that and still keep your fire and stuff? Because I've seen so many that were lazy and prayerless and so on and so forth. I don't know if here's what I agree with. Here's what I don't have a lot to say as far as what some people know and speak about the Catholic Church as far as how deep this stuff goes. But I will tell you that with this new Pope, it's interfaith all the way, and it's connecting people to, whether he knows it or not. I don't have revelation about it, but I know that there are things he's doing that are working to bring about this one world harlot system. It's unquestionable. I mean, he wants every world global leader to come together for the sake of humankind. And that is the agenda. Some of these people know they're doing it, some don't. I can't, if I had received revelation about it, I would say I know he's one of those that knows he's doing it. I don't have the authority to say that because I've not heard that. But I will tell you, it's obvious to me he is uniting this one world harlot. And he's not the only one. Tony Blair's doing it. Obama's doing it. Rick Warren's doing it. T.D. Jakes is doing it. Do they know they're doing it? I can't say for sure. I think some do, some don't. Who am I to say unless the Lord tells me? That's where I have to, between me and the Lord, that's where I have to be right.
If I can sneak a word in here real quick, Sheila and James, I do have a big heart for Elaine, only to the extent of this. Okay, I did go to a seminary, graduated from a seminary, decided not to become a priest. I understand the Catholic hierarchy, the system. I'll just say this real quick. About 10, 12 years ago, I was involved in an investigation. It was a huge fraud ring. There were people that were down the chain that had absolutely no idea, because the fraud was so big, and to compare it to, we'll say, Catholicism, in some cases the lie is so big that there is this lack of identifiability. In other words, there are people that were in this that had no idea that they were involved in a criminal conspiracy. Now, do you blame them? Only if they just sit there and just go along with the flow, knowing that there's something wrong. But if she feels that there's something wrong in her heart and then seeks the truth, I can guarantee you that she'll find. I mean, at least you know what I'm saying. So like, even if you were just compared to the investigation, the people, two of the co-conspirators way down the chain said, in fact, they were the ones that brought the entire conspiracy down by saying, wait a minute, there's something wrong here, we know, and they started asking questions, they brought it forward, and bingo, that was it. So that's the only thing I'll say about that. Go ahead, Sheila.
Well, the only other thing I'll say is, again, I think, James made a really good point. There are a lot of Catholics that are very charismatic, and they are saved, born again, Bible-believing, on-fire Christians. But, I mean, I guess something that just doesn't quite resonate in my guts is when you've got, Pope Francis and some of the just I guess I've just done too much digging over the years, and when I look at some of the things these people are involved with, you had them reaching out to Pentecostals and saying earlier this spring, atheists are good to go and homosexuals, it's no biggie. I mean, your leader is pretty representative of what you are as a group, and I would never call myself a Catholic when my top leader is just making atrocious false claims and things that absolutely go against Bible. What did you just say, James? You said, woe to anyone that's being fed a false doctrine. I just say, do really, really go to God and ask if you really want to keep that title, because, obviously your leader speaks volumes for something that you're doing. So anyway, that's just, that's just a side thought that I had, if you want to comment on that, James.
Oh, Sheila, I love it what you and Doug both said. Doug, I'm so thankful and so appreciative of that fact that you have this heart for Elaine, because isn't that largely what we're doing this for, Doug? We are blowing the trumpet and sounding the alarm because the people are in bondage to the deception. And what is the deception? All right. Doug and Sheila and James are some leaders that are getting together to help people to see some things. We're all going to believe a little differently, but we've come together. We've come together to speak about the kingdom of God. And there's people that are listening that don't know they're going astray. I care about those people. And Elaine, I can say just like what I can't remember if Sheila or Doug said it. I think Sheila said it. If you have a stomach, my sister, for the truth, you're going to be okay in the hour we're living in. But if you are okay with a human leader leading a movement that is either pro-abortion, which is pro-death, pro-same-sex marriage, which will bring about the same judgment, fire and brimstone, as was brought to Sodom and Gomorrah, and the other interfaith, one-world harlot, ingathering, then you close that blind eye. Here's the promise to people like Elaine and to me too, to everybody. Jesus said in Luke 21, watch and pray always so that you're counted worthy to escape and to stand before the Son of Man. Counted worthy to escape all these things. So Elaine and others and others of us, every one of us have two things they have to do. You can't just get saved. There's two other things. You can't just receive the Lord as your Savior. There's two other things. You got to watch and you got to pray. And he didn't say you just got to watch and pray. He said you got to do it always. Then you'll be counted worthy to escape these things. So as my heart is going out for people that are unaware of what we're talking about, my heart just, it cries for people. I also have to tell them that this is the truth. Watch and pray always, or you, good old you, are not counted worthy in God's eyes to escape the wrath that's going to be poured out according to Luke 21. Now that's in red. And that's in red, friend. And with urgency and with pain in my heart, I adjure and I beseech my brethren that don't know this. Now you've heard the truth about it. Now, Doug, you would probably agree, now you must put feet and action to that word of Jesus spoke in Luke 21, watch and pray always, so that you're counted worthy to escape.
Amen. Amen.
Well, I have a question that's been emailed in, and actually I have quite a few of this theme. I would like to have your comment on this, James. And it's funny because we talked about something similar. Okay, I've got about 4 of the same tone, so I'll just kind of generically state this. I am married to a non-believer, and then the other ones are I'm married to somebody that is not awake to these things going on. They are not open to it at all. I really believe that this is not a good equal yoking. What are your comments on, I guess, dissolving a marriage because the person doesn't think they're equally yoked? I'd like your comments on that.
One of our students here at our Camp Goshen Prayer Center just shook his head and said, no, that's not grounds for divorce. And I'll tell you, there's not near enough information that I have received to warrant that. Here's the generals, because it's such a general question with limited information. When you say I do, you've said I do, and there are things Jesus said will let you out of a marriage. Okay? And we're coming into an age. First of all, hear my stance on marriage, because this is a subject that the sanctity of marriage is really treasured among us here. Okay, because it's something that God really, really, really is concerned about and wants us to understand. Don't break this vow. But watch this. Having said that, God gave me a revelation about married life in the days of Noah. I wrote a book on it, The Message of Zipporah, Volume 1, Married Life in the Days of Noah. And the Lord gave me this word where He said that Noah's wedding ring, let me I've got the book up right here. He said this. He said Noah's wedding ring, let me get to that chapter, meant more than just a sacred marriage. Yeah, Noah's wedding ring meant more than a sacred marriage. It meant till death do us part if you do the will of God. Now, in Noah's day, here before you throw stones, in Noah's day, the Lord was destroying the earth. There was trauma and crisis like there had never been. So obviously the ante was upped. Okay? We're entering another one of those generations, so the Lord's giving us revelation on how to navigate ourselves in our married life. And don't worry, I'm your friend. But listen to this. Paul the Apostle said in one of the Corinthians, he said, because of the present tribulation that the church is undergoing, I'm advising people not to marry. Now, he turned right around in some other chapters, and he said, you've not sinned if you marry, and let the virgin marry, and you've not sinned. And another place, I'd rather people be like me, if you have a certain gift of celibacy or whatever. But he said that there's certain generations where I'm advising people not to get married. But if you have gotten married and you're unequally yoked, he also said in the Word, you've got to stick it out. But at what point, here's where I get to another vision. I saw a vision of a man that was a pastor and his wife and children standing in line to receive the mark of the beast. This is a pastor, his wife, and children. What happens when that wife says, no, kids, run. Grandma's waiting down the street in the car. We're not going to take the mark. Daddy's going to the lake of fire because he's going to take the mark. Obviously, Noah's wedding ring meant more than just a sacred marriage at that point. It meant till death do us part if you do the will of God. Now, I have wrestled with this, and I've been fearful about this because this stuff is just not popular, and it's not good for advertisement at the local church in America, but that doesn't matter to me as much as I am the prophetic minister that's got to prepare people for the age we're about to walk into. But, ma'am, you and the unequal yoke that your husband, that you say your husband have together, I sympathize with you, but don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet, because Paul also said that you may be able to sanctify him with your walk. So my encouragement to people that feel they are unequally yoked, and there are many falling away, and that's not even wait. At least wait for them to either do something where the Lord says by His Spirit, all right, you got to go now. This is getting, and that could be adultery or other things, But really, I'm telling people, you need a godly Noah pastor that's going to tell you, hold the line, and also let's pray and fast to hear God's heartbeat about your spouse and about where they're at and about where you're at with them. If you're watching and praying always, as Jesus said, at some point you're going to get clear revelation about where you're at. And you owe it to yourself and to God to be, and if you do that, you'll be counted worthy to escape, because He said in Matthew, He said that marriage, that in the last days, some would be eating, drinking, and giving in marriage till the flood comes and takes them all away. So marriage is going to be a stumbling block and a distraction to some people, and they'll fall away and be judged by the end-time wrath of God because of their careless marriage and giving in marriage. I hope that helps.
Well, I think that does help, and I mean, we better be, if we are married, pressing in, praying for our spouses. But I think the overtone there in these emails were sort of, that contingency of what if this person is jeopardizing my safety or my spiritual relationship with God. And I think there's like you said, there's a fine line when a pastor's got his family lined up to get the mark of the beast. I think it's a pretty good indication that, things are over at that point. You're really not. Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that's very good. Well, I mean, we're kind of approaching the last 15 minutes. We'll maybe take a few more calls. Area code 770, welcome to the program. What is your comment?
Yes, this is Richard, and first I'd like to say I love all y'all, and I thank you for the good work y'all are doing. And I called just like that last caller. I got married in 75, and I was lost. My wife was saved, and we're soon be hitting 40 years of marriage, and I got saved in 89. And I thank God that she hung with me, and I believe that even if a person is lost, and if they hang in there and stand on God's word and all, there's going to be some shakings and all. They'll turn to God. But the main reason I called to tell you about a dream. And I had a dream that there was a big church, a gigantic church that burnt. And I was there to price it, to demo it. And it burnt really hot. And I was crawling across the floor because I didn't know if the floor would fall in. And I kept on brushing debris away and all, and I seen that the foundation was perfect all over. And then I crawled to the back where there was a door open, and I got to the back, and the door was open, and I stood up, and there was a line of old-timey Coke coolers out through there, and some of the biggest chunks of meat sitting in the Coke coolers. And there was a red Volkswagen, and with a convertible Volkswagen with the top standing up, and I hadn't closed it all the way. It was a new Volkswagen. But I prayed and asked God to show me what that meant. And almost immediately the next day, he showed me that they were feeding them in them old Coke machines, the old Coke chest type things. Another thing, I walked down through there and I smelled of every piece of meat, and there were several of them, big, gigantic chunks. I don't even, and I smelled of them, and they were all perfect. I mean, they smelled so good you wanted, bite of it. And then I prayed and asked God to show me what it meant, and He showed me that the church was feeding them something sweet to the taste. That's what the Coke coolers were, but the meat was being left out back. And then I never could figure out the cooler, and so I've kept.
Where is Joseph when you need a dream interpretation, huh?
Right. And then I prayed on the Volkswagen, and about 2 weeks later, and this was back in probably July when I dreamed this, and I dreamed about I prayed about the Volkswagen. It's sitting there with the top standing straight up, and it was a brand new Volkswagen. I even asked, I said, does everything go with it to be, demoed out of here? They said, everything goes. And then about 2 weeks later, the Lord showed me. I was laying there, and all of a sudden that Volkswagen was standing on its end, and it was the shape of a sickle.
Interesting. Wow. Well, thank you very much, caller, for weighing in on that. It's so interesting, James. You really are equipping prophetic people. Obviously, intercessors and prophetic people are really important. What's your, I guess, what would be your comment on that? And also, being that prophecy and intercession and people that also are having visions are really at the heart of the end-time intervention of our Lord, and it is the enabling that'll release and make way for the Lord to enter into the affairs of men. So, we saw that John the Baptist was raised as a forerunner of the birth and ministry of Jesus. So also in our day, corporate intercessors, prophetic people, ones that are dreaming, are also being raised up too. So I think it's very relevant to be paying attention to these various dreams, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's a matter of life and death in some instances, not always. But can you imagine if Joseph wasn't a praying man when he was leading Mary around and Jesus around? I mean, three dreams that he had where the angel gave him specific instructions on how to save all three of their lives, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can't separate biblical Christianity from prophetic dreams. You just can't. And I'll say this about what our 770 caller said when he said that God can, or something, that if we give our spouse a chance, that they may get saved. And it's absolutely true. They may get saved. And that's the easy part for me as a pastor to convince people of. But Sheila and Doug, the hard part is saying they may not. And they may play into the system of this end-time harlot system and the Antichrist system, and we don't want to have our heads in the sand in case that's the case. And about the dream that the 770 brother shared, is the thing that I need more time to kind of let him tell me. They get tired of me around here. I'll say, okay, now tell me the whole dream or vision again. That way, because the person saying it, you can't get all the facts. You either need to read it and reread it or hear it and rehear it. But the meat and the foundation of that church, it's being, from what I remember about what he said, is that the church was burning, and he's crawling around checking out the foundation. Well, the foundation was fine. Well, the foundation is built on apostles. The Bible's clear is that's the foundation, and but maybe the outward part of it and the rest of the church, God's refining it and burning it, purging it. And then that meat, that's left out back. Well, that meat is the sound doctrine. A lot of times that apostles say, like Paul said, I wanted to give you the meat, but you still needed milk.
Right.
Well, I believe that God is raising apostles in this hour to give us the meat, and that the bride cannot be prepared and without spot and ready for the bridegroom to come back to get her until he brings these apostles by his Spirit to give us the meat to mature us, right?
Yeah, so that's really well said. Very nicely said. And I suppose I'd encourage that 770 caller to go to weekendvigilante.com, and you just click on James Crawford. It'll take you to his site, to his contact information. If anybody, wants help navigating through dreams and different prophetic things, I think that James is definitely your man. Because and I'd like you to get into the final waning moments. I'm just really sorry, callers. We just had too many callers, and we're in the waning moments. But I'd really like you to talk about Camp Goshen, because I think that is really important thing for people to know about.
Sure. Camp Goshen. Well, we are located in DeKalb, Texas, which is northeast Texas, and I mean it's a little out of the way place that's fairly close to Texarkana, which is also a small city. But the Lord said, I want you to raise this 24/7 house of prayer like David's tabernacle was in Chronicles, night and day worship and intercession like he's doing all over the nations. And he said, nobody else would do it, will you? And and this is what we've been doing actually for over a decade, is raising up houses of prayer that where people for these last days that are coming on this earth can have a now word to prepare them as a Noah's ark, as the ark prepared Noah and his house. And
Sheila, folks.
Hey, Doug, did we just lose James?
I'm just looking right now. Either that or
I see him in.
Yeah, I see him.
No, I see him. He's in the back there. James, are you still on the line with us? Did you accidentally maybe hit your mute button by any chance? Can you check, James? I really wanted him to talk about Camp Goshen. Basically, I'll just wrap things up if we don't get him back on, Doug.
All right.
What's really interesting about what he's doing, and again, I really, really, Doug, encourage people to go to his website and really check out some of the things he's doing. But as we lost him there, that's really too bad. I mean, you got a picture right now, and this is a young man too. I mean, James is only in his early 40s. I mean, 10 acres of East Texas woods. He's been developing this camp, a small chapel, a daily prayer center, like Moses had, a prophetic music studio, not this, Christian kumbaya music nowadays, but really powerful prophetic music and, kind of an end-time city of refuge, really, prayer shelter. And it's, also for homeless people, a training watchman and training daily teleconferences and deliverance teachings, and they're healing the brokenhearted and teaching prophetic training and healing, and so like a prayer shelter and really preparing people for what's coming. And that's just absolutely incredible. There's even water on the property. It's just incredible what he's done there. And I really, I guess, Doug, we only do have about 5 minutes left, and I'd really like to encourage people to go to that website.
We've got 7 seconds left, actually, if you can believe this. In my, our program clocks are terribly off.
Well, interesting. And again, I show James his mic is good, and he's in this queue, so I don't know what's going on there. But again, Satan working overtime again, right, folks? It's right incredible, the stuff that you just can't seem to get out, the big stuff. But I'll tell you what, bottom line is go to weekendvigilante.com, click on that link, and I really, Doug, encourage people to. He's got all his stuff is, free ebooks. That one of Obama's on there, and I just think he's doing incredible work, and we have got to, as a body of Christ, support these kind of ministries. And I'm really, and I'm not just suggesting, I'm heavily encouraging people to go and, think about, prayerfully consider sowing into that ministry, because I'm going to tell you what, I really believe James is an incredible man being used in incredible ways by God. And, a lot of people say, wow, I've never heard of this guy. So, incredible that, he's not been on the big radars, but I sure want to encourage people to really go to that site and really prayerfully consider giving to this, because the stuff they're doing there is just absolutely profound.
Absolutely, and that's linked off of your website, weekendvigilante.com, and of course, hagmannandhagmann.com on the left-hand side. Again, our program clocks, there's something definitely wrong here with the transmission. Just want to say thank you, Mr. James Crawford, world-hops.com. God bless you. Thank you so much. Sheila, you get the final word. All right, well.